Opening his eyes to an unfamiliar sight, the protagonist questioned his surroundings and the nature of this new world before noticing a goddess and asking if he had been summoned. As memories of his past life resurfaced, he expressed his refusal to follow the others, a request the goddess acknowledged with understanding. Moments later, he awoke convinced it had all been a bizarre dream, but after realizing he was lying outdoors, he began to question exactly where he was. Finding himself in the middle of the woods, the protagonist questioned if he had truly been transported to another world, struggling to accept the reality of his situation. Upon hearing his own voice, he sensed something was wrong, and a quick look at himself revealed that his school uniform had completely vanished. Suddenly clutching his head, he struggled to process the fact that he had truly become a different person. Completely bewildered, the protagonist struggled to make sense of the situation, as a look of visible panic washed over his face. Fuji tried to calmly piece his memories back together, recalling how he had been with his classmates just before his encounter with the goddess. Recalling their earlier conversation about being summoned to another world, he noted that while he didn't mind the prospect itself, he flatly refused to go if it meant being paired with this specific group. Fuji speculated that his stubbornness was the reason he had been sent alone, beginning his journey with a rebirth rather than a typical summons. Curious about his new appearance, he made his way to a nearby river to examine his reflection in the water. Fuji noticed his new appearance consisted of a delicate frame, fair skin, and a significantly shorter stature, leading him to frantically check his body to see if anything was missing. He then checked inside his waistband and breathed a sigh of relief, comforted to find that his elephant was still in its proper place. The protagonist found it unsettling to experience such sensations in his current form, noting that the feeling was strangely misplaced, perhaps even sinful. Recalling he had a backpack, Fuji decided it was best to inspect his gear first. He discovered a stash of food and basic necessities, along with a pouch of coins that left him wondering about their true value. After inspecting the contents, Fuji asked about his weapon's location to prepare for potential monster encounters, but something else suddenly caught his attention. An information window materialized before him, leading him to realize it was his item box. Inside, he discovered an assortment of swords, a shield, a breastplate, and a potion, filling him with a wave of relief. Convinced that he should possess more overpowered skills, he asked to check his status, and a window displaying his abilities instantly materialized before them. He noticed his traveler skill was only level 1, which felt underwhelming, but he also possessed unique abilities like detailed analysis and subject box, even if they were still at a low level. Fuji questioned whether a toolbox and detailed analysis were truly his only special abilities, wondering if these were really his supposed cheat skills. He let out a breath, reflecting on what truly mattered in this information-heavy world, and resolving to maintain a positive outlook. Determined to understand his situation, he began analyzing everything in sight, applying his skill to every object, and even the specific terms that appeared before him. His item box appears to have unique properties, including a quick equipment function that allows him to instantly swap into pre-configured gear. He discovered that class level is actually more vital than character level, as skills tied to a specific class improve the more they are used. Realizing how essential classes are in this world, he found himself curious about the potential of the Traveler class. While the world felt remarkably similar to the game, it was somehow even more thrilling. He questioned what the consequences of death would be in this reality, but knowing he couldn't simply test it, he decided to remain cautious. Realizing that staying in the woods after dark was far too dangerous with monsters likely roaming about, he decided to use his funds to head straight for the city. Fuji decided to follow the river downstream, soon spotting a bridge ahead and feeling relieved to have found a clear path. But a sudden sound quickly caught his attention. Looking to the side, he spotted a carriage passing by, and a closer look left him genuinely shocked. As he waited, an elven girl led the way on horseback, accompanied by a carriage carrying a girl with animal ears. Upon realizing he was truly in another world, the protagonist instinctively ducked into hiding while marveling at the sight of the girls before him. He realized too late that he could have hitched a ride to the city, but the carriage was already out of reach, leaving him frustrated by his own mistake. Far from being upset, he found the sight of a fantasy race thrilling, which instantly boosted his motivation. As he continued down the road, he encountered the same carriage, and asked if they had been waiting for him. Upon closer inspection, the protagonist noticed the road was obstructed. Sensing something was amiss, he immediately rushed toward the blockage. While the beast-eared girl repelled the enemy's assault, the elf realized they were being ambushed and immediately ordered the group to prepare for battle. Realizing they were heavily outnumbered, the bearded leader commanded his men to subdue the girls and seize the cargo, though he specifically instructed them to spare the women's lives. Fuji questioned if he was witnessing a bandit raid, struck by how unsettling this world felt, now that he realized outlaws seemed to outnumber the guards. Although he briefly considered helping, the protagonist dismissed the idea due to his lack of levels, questioning the logic of rushing into battle when he hadn't even received a basic tutorial. Realizing he couldn't just stand by, Fuji gripped his sword and lunged at the bearded man, stabbing him instantly. The force of the impact knocked him off balance and sent him to the ground, but he was stunned to see he had sliced the man clean in half, realizing the two-handed mithril weapon was far more powerful than he had anticipated. Witnessing their leader fall to a single strike, the remaining men were gripped by terror, as the elf girl insisted they be dealt with immediately. She then unleashed her windblade magic, and as the protagonist witnessed the spell, the momentum of the situation shifted instantly. One of the men denounced Fuji as a villain, declaring that despite his small size, he would pay for killing their leader before charging directly at him. As he closed the gap, he thrust his sword forward and impaled the man, the sudden stench of blood making him realize with sickening clarity that this was no dream. The protagonist admitted he had taken a life in self-defense, questioning if this world was truly so ruthless that people would kill and die over a simple robbery. While he was visibly unwell, an elf and a beast girl approached to see if he had regained his composure, and he managed to respond that he was finally starting to feel more stable. They expressed their gratitude, noting that his victory over their enemies allowed them to launch a counterattack and escape with only minor injuries, while Fuji privately felt he had merely stumbled into the situation. Apologizing for her late introduction, the elf revealed her name was Ruinessa, and explained that she served as the head of security for the merchant caravan. Reaching out his hand, he introduced himself as Toy, privately noting that he had simply presented his real name, Fuji, in katakana. Turning to him, Rueni explained that before she could present him to their master, Mr. Galteo, he would first need to wash the blood off in the river. When Fuji asked if she was suggesting they swim together, the girl explained that she understood why a beautiful woman like him would find it more convenient to travel disguised as a man. As the protagonist attempted to explain the situation, he was quickly silenced and reassured that everything would be fine, though he pleaded for them to wait as they began to undress him. Ignoring his protests, the animal-eared girl undressed and remarked that he shouldn't feel ashamed at his age, before she began attending to herself. Feeling that the world had become far too overstimulating to process, the protagonist began to wash up. Once the formalities were concluded, he felt relieved that he hadn't exposed his secret, but he soon noticed a man standing beside Ruin-Ez. He was introduced to Mr. Golteo, the imposing head of the trading company, who surprisingly turned out to be quite friendly, and offered him passage to the city of Kelnifi. Finding the area intriguing, the protagonist mentioned how interesting it seemed, leading the man to agree and identify the local dungeon as the Baldark Labyrinth. Drawn by the promise of rare loot and treasures, adventurers from across the world gather here, filling the area with a palpable energy. Golteo explained that he currently manages the Golteo Trading Company, which operates out of its base in Kelnifi. Fuji suggests registering with the Adventurers Guild before heading to the dungeon, noting that while anyone can enter, only those with the right skills and strength will actually strike it rich. Dungeon exploration is a high-risk venture that usually requires a team. However, larger parties make it difficult to divide the spoils, and a lack of trust among companions only invites disaster. Fuji acknowledged this truth, privately reflecting on how unforgiving dungeons are for solo adventurers, while Golteo suggested that with the right funds, he could simply purchase a servant to form a party. Taken aback, the protagonist inquired about the servant, realizing that such roles actually existed in this world. Since this arrangement is essentially a contractual hire, they still retain their rights, meaning any inhumane treatment or tasks forced upon them outside of their agreement would be a clear violation of the law. Realizing he had nearly forgotten to hand them over, Golteo presented the protagonist with 2 cards, explaining they were the achievement rewards from the robber he had defeated. Staring at the faintly glowing map in his hands, the protagonist questioned if it was truly a record map, prompting a surprised Golteo to ask if he was genuinely unaware of its nature. Fuji performed a detailed analysis, revealing that these cards emerge from a person's chest upon death. Knowing they could be exchanged for money or used for management, he was stunned to find that they were literally manifesting from within human bodies. The protagonist laughed heartily and gave a negative response, remarking that while it had been a long time since he'd seen anything like it, he found the experience quite refreshing. Golteo expressed his sincere gratitude for the rescue and presented him with a pouch. Despite claiming he wasn't doing it for the money, his body instinctively lunged forward to grab the reward. Golteo insisted that as a man of nobility, failing to show proper gratitude would bring shame to his title as head of the Golteo Trading Company, so he urged them to accept his offer for the sake of his honor. After a brief moment of consideration, the protagonist agreed, and the man pointed out that the town of Kelnifi was already within sight. Kelnifi is a sprawling metropolis second only to the capital. flourishing thanks to a dungeon-driven economy centered on the Baldark Maze. It was here that he informed Gulteo of his plans to remain in the city for a while. After personally guiding him to the recommended inn, the man paid for several months of rent in advance, clearly showing how much he had taken a liking to Fuji. Stepping inside, he realized this was his first proper home in this new world. After taking in the unique atmosphere, he reached his room and admitted his exhaustion, grateful to finally have a bed to rest in. Noticing that his clothes still carried the scent of blood, he realized he needed to wash them before heading to bed, and went to fetch a basin. The hostess explained that the city lacks traditional plumbing, relying instead on magical circuits powered by water mage stones. However, since soap is unavailable, washing must be done with water alone. Fuji was frustrated by the lack of hygiene, as bathrooms in this world are considered a rare luxury. With only a handful of public bathhouses in the city and private facilities reserved for the nobility, most people have to settle for simply wiping themselves down with a damp cloth. The toilet was nothing more than a pit with a bucket and no drain. And since paper was a luxury, leaves were used as a substitute. Even though this was considered a high-end hotel, he realized the world's infrastructure was far more primitive than he had anticipated. After washing his only set of clothes, he huddled under the blankets to stay warm, frustrated that he couldn't go out to satisfy his craving for a hot bowl of rice. At that exact moment, the protagonist let out a sneeze and decided to check his current balance. Along with his starting equipment, he received 10,000 gurials from the goddess and a matching sum from Gulteo. By cross-referencing the men's accounts with the analysis, it was determined that the world's gorilla currency is roughly equivalent to a single Japanese yen. Upon realizing he now possessed 600,000 yen, the protagonist remarked that he could finally buy whatever he wanted. Catching himself, he realized the importance of budgeting his funds to avoid running out. He planned to spend the next day purchasing fresh clothes and upgrading his armor for the dungeon. As he sat by the window gazing at the street, he contemplated whether the people outside had also been transported to this world. Fuji made it clear that he wanted no part of them or their world, wishing only to forget the past and escape the weight of his memories. Gritting his teeth, the protagonist realized with frustration that he would have to face these same hardships even in this new world. No longer known as Fuji Yuji, he had been transformed into a toy, leaving him with no choice but to abandon his former identity and focus entirely on the future. With a look of firm resolve, the protagonist decided that in this new world, he would live exclusively as a toy. He found solo play incredibly rewarding, and was determined to extract every possible benefit from this world. But just as he collapsed from the day's exhaustion, a notification window appeared to inform him of a new item. As his skill level rose, his abilities for detailed analysis, status management, and class customization were all enhanced, allowing him to modify his stats at any moment. However, he was soon overcome by exhaustion and could no longer keep his eyes open. Meanwhile, in the capital of Malgus, Princess Erda questioned the validity of the report, receiving a firm confirmation from the men standing before her. The man with glasses confirmed that after multiple verifications, there was no mistake. Several of those summoned from another world possessed the hero class. The princess expressed her confusion over their mission to save the realm, while others complained about the lack of smartphones and the peculiar behavior of the locals. Among the ranks of the heroes, a criminal was eventually revealed. However, when she dismissed the situation as absolute nonsense, her words quickly drew the ire of one of the men who overheard her. Meanwhile, the dark-haired girl began to question if Fuji had gone missing, having assumed he was with the group the entire time. Perplexed by his sudden disappearance, she could only call out his name within her thoughts. As the protagonist slept soundly in his bed, a status window suddenly appeared, identifying him as a natural hero. The brunette had never managed to have a real conversation with him, leaving her longing for just one more chance to cross paths. It suddenly dawned on her that the protagonist had been transported elsewhere, leaving him to struggle with the weight of his newfound isolation. Stopping herself, she realized that overthinking was useless, and decided to do everything in her power before searching for him personally, asking the man to wait for her. Meanwhile, in the royal capital of Malgus, Hermira stood before a crowd as an onlooker questioned who she intended to teach. He stated that her status as a princess was irrelevant to him, but after she pointed and branded him a criminal, he questioned their authority to give him orders. He also questioned the severity of the situation, noting that they had summoned them without permission, and now had no way to send them back. Infuriated, the man questioned if they were being bullied, but the princess urged him to stay calm, clarifying that her words were a request rather than a command. Remorta explained that they had been summoned to protect the kingdom from a looming threat, just as a massive surge of monsters began appearing across the territory. To avert the disaster, They would need to clear the first 10 floors of every dungeon and eliminate a specific number of monsters. As historical records suggest, this is the key to stabilizing the situation. Without intervention, the monsters are expected to break free from the dungeon within a few years, leaving the nation to face catastrophic losses. Addressing the group as heroes, the princess requested their assistance in hopes of encouraging more frequent expeditions into the dungeons. She assured them that all their needs would be met within the castle, especially since the ritual to return to their homeworld had yet to be discovered. The princess assured them that once their mission was complete, the kingdom would officially guarantee a way to send them back home. Furthermore, Erda noted that if they chose to remain in this world after their victory, they would be granted noble titles. Standing close by, a girl questioned whether they would truly be granted noble status and a home within the castle. Hayate Ushita, the hero of the storm, concluded that they were ultimately left with no other choice. The golden hero, Sadao Doi, remained indifferent to whether the location was a dungeon or something else, as his only concern was finding something to crush. The man in glasses instructed him to wait, explaining that they must first undergo a peace education course and a month of combat and magic training to ensure their safety. Infuriated, the first man turned to lash out with a string of insults, demanding his silence. The newcomer was revealed to be the fiery hero Shinji Akaba, who insisted on handling matters on their own terms while eager to test the hero's true potential. Just then, an armored man approached the princess and urged her to step back, arguing that even for heroes, this was crossing the line. But she quickly signaled for him to stop. Erda expressed her understanding, noting that anyone eager to enter the dungeon immediately should be allowed to form squads while the necessary equipment is prepared for them. When the man questioned her resolve, she confirmed her decision, explaining that it was better to let them proceed as they wished rather than risk a violent confrontation. A brunette alchemist named Sayaka Isukushima soon approached her, suggesting they needed another party member and asking if she knew what was troubling him. The princess disagreed, explaining that they hadn't known the exact number of people being summoned beforehand, though their records currently accounted for 34 individuals. As Sayaka scanned the crowd, she realized that no one had even noticed the protagonist's absence, as they were all preoccupied discussing the dungeon and their surrender. Meanwhile, Shinji struck one of the men and ordered him to stay out of his sight. The girl decided it was best to keep her distance from the group, while Hayate warned him not to damage the sandbag, a move Sayaka believed would ultimately be better for Fuji. Meanwhile, at the hotel, the woman expressed surprise that he had finished his entire meal despite the large portions, but he simply pivoted the conversation to ask for the best places to shop. Deciding it was finally time to explore the city, he grabbed his bag and set off with a clear sense of purpose. While waking up and starting to wash, he felt the faint impression of a dream, though the details eluded him. Staring into the mirror, he realized that a night's rest hadn't changed a thing. He still appeared more like a girl than a boy. Despite being 18 at heart, he studied his reflection again, questioning if he could successfully pass for someone younger. Believing a fresh start would help him cast off the burdens of his past, he chose to reinvent himself and treat this new world like a plaything. Seated at the table with a meal before him, he thought back to the steak he had that morning, clearly satisfied with the portion he'd been served. While the hotel was excellent and worthy of thanking Olteo, he realized he needed to find a reliable source of income to support his stay. Given the dungeon's presence in the city, he decided to make its exploration his immediate priority. Taking a seat at his desk, he opened the information panel to reflect on the previous night, noting that status setting and class management had been integrated into his skills. The status system allows for the free distribution of STP points, and while he currently has none to spend, they will surely become useful once he begins to level up. The next feature, class management, is even more significant. While most people in this world must visit a temple to change their class, he has the unique ability to switch between any available classes on his own at any time. Stunned by the revelation, the protagonist felt his gamer instincts sharpen as he began to visualize himself switching between different classes. Furthermore, we believed he could switch his class instantly to adapt to the situation at hand. The protagonist recognized the potential of this cheat skill, noting that his power would scale directly with the number of classes he could access. His basic skill set now encompasses the roles of traveler, villager, cook, trader, and loader. While he was a villager by default, his constant travels and habit of preparing his own meals naturally unlocked the traveler and cook skills, reflecting how everyone must meet specific requirements to progress. Acquiring special classes like the Avenger or the Hero of Rebirth is far more challenging, as the former requires surviving over 100 life-threatening ordeals with an unbroken will, while the latter demands divine recognition and reincarnation from another world. Toy found the idea of vengeance unappealing, believing there was no need for retribution even after his rebirth, and felt that everyone should simply move on. This reincarnated hero clearly possesses a class of his own, and attempting to use standard hero abilities would surely lead to his immediate exposure. He resolved to keep those two classes hidden, deciding to live as a simple villager or traveler until he could eventually acquire a combat-oriented class. Upon finally reaching the city, the protagonist took in the vibrant scene of diverse crowds, active merchants, and various intriguing wares. The Gulteo Trading Company seemed to manage every resource in the city, ranging from daily essentials to combat gear, and he found their headquarters to be impressively massive upon arrival. Upon stepping inside, he was surprised to find a vast interior that felt like a store within a store, reminiscent of a local department store or shopping mall. Toei gathered his hotel essentials, a change of clothes, underwear, and socks, and tucked them away into his storage drawer. Recognizing the need for better preparation, he decided to acquire a backup weapon, some armor, and a restorative potion. While he questioned if he could truly manage the situation on his own, Galtale suddenly noticed him lost in thought. The man expressed his relief at being noticed so quickly, and after the protagonist offered a greeting, he was asked if he was searching for something specific. As Toei began weighing his options for a solo dungeon run, Gulteo was immediately reminded of his own previous words. He then requested a moment of the protagonist's time before leading him down into the basement. The men explained that this floor was reserved for the servants, but Poi told him to wait, clarifying that he didn't intend to purchase anyone himself. In response, the man acknowledged that while he understood the hesitation regarding servants, he believed it was a safer alternative to facing the dangers alone. They even employ those with dungeon experience, as magical contracts eliminate the risk of betrayal by strictly regulating their actions and ensuring complete confidentiality. Goteo asked for his thoughts on the plan, suggesting that even a simple observation might reveal some clues, and Toei agreed to take a look. The concept of servitude felt unsettling to him, and though it seemed to be a norm in this world, he refused to treat a human life as a commodity or become the kind of person he despised. Occasionally, the only path to survival for a family is to sell a member into service, a practice that might seem like a standard hiring system, though it strictly distinguishes between voluntary and controlled servants. Reasoning that the man's vast resources were the likely source of his wealth, the protagonist began considering the possibility of hiring some help. Through the camera feeds, one girl called him adorable and asked if he would be her master, while another man claimed he could keep him satisfied from night until dawn. Deeply embarrassed by his own words, the protagonist listened as Gulteo cautioned him that such servants were a costly investment. He explained that given the budget for dungeon explorers, he could only offer a specific selection, pointing to the 6 candidates standing before them, 2 of whom were girls. Activating his analysis skill, he noted that the group consisted of various classes and levels, even identifying a priest among the servants. Despite being entry-level researchers with single-digit levels, they are still more powerful than any peasant newcomer, as their non-peasant status grants them essential skills and stat bonuses. Gulteo suggested that if he required someone of a higher level, it would be more efficient to search through the Researchers Guild directly. Since Toei already filled the role of a frontline melee fighter, he figured it would be best to recruit either a tank or a healer next. Something about the deal didn't sit right with him, as a 2 million yen price tag seemed far from profitable when a heavy fighter cost only 200,000, and a priest was valued at 220,000. Recalling a specific detail, the protagonist turned to the man and inquired if there were any others similar to the elf girl from the previous day, such as a magician. Gulteo explained that magicians are scarce, making magical servants even harder to find, and though he had no immediate recommendations, Toei pressed him about a potential candidate. In response, the man revealed that one of the criminals under their supervision was a young female mage. After being drawn into a discussion regarding a serious crime, the protagonist questioned if her dangerous reputation was the reason she hadn't been recommended to him. The man explained that danger wasn't the issue, since he could investigate if he wanted to, but her situation was different because no one was willing to take her, regardless of the cost. Toei wondered if this was a classic romantic flag, questioning if her prickly yet charming personality meant she was a tsundere who would eventually grow fond of him. Upon reaching the correct cell, the man explained that the magician inside was over 300 years old, making her far too elderly to be of any use for manual labor. Stunned by the revelation, the protagonist questioned if she was truly 3 centuries old, as the reality far exceeded his initial estimations. Gulteo relayed reports of a magical experiment gone wrong, explaining that an explosion had occurred, which pulled everything in the surrounding area together. She insisted it was an accident and showed no signs of malice, yet the extent of the damage resulted in a 100-year extension to her sentence, catching the man off guard once again. The man explained that her long life is attributed to her elven ancestry, but by law, she is scheduled to be sent to the mines for forced labor tomorrow. The protagonist worried about the hardships of her age, knowing she only had a few days remaining. Exhaling as he reflected on the impact, he turned to the man and asked for permission to speak with her, which the man readily granted. Approaching the camera, the protagonist greeted his grandmother and introduced himself before asking for her name. After a moment of silence, the elderly woman introduced herself as Anelise, leading him to ask if there was a specific destination she wanted to reach. The old woman responded by expressing her desire to return to the dungeon if given the opportunity. Toy agreed to the purchase, fully aware that it was for his own sake, as he realized that even after rebirth, his fundamental nature remained unchanged. Eventually, they headed home together with the elderly woman on his back, a moment that reminded him of when he carried his own grandmother from the hospital. Recalling Golteo's warning, he remembered being asked if he was certain about the purchase, as a master is fully responsible for their servants' care. Understanding that signing meant a lifelong commitment, he finalized the contract in silence. Toa began to wonder if he had acted too impulsively, having already purchased an elderly servant just 2 days after his rebirth. With plenty of funds remaining, he paid a small fee to let her stay at the hotel, ensuring that providing for her wouldn't be an issue for the time being. Upon arriving at the room, he decided she should take the bed while he settled on the floor, certain that nothing would happen even if they shared the space. The thought of waking up to her lifeless body was unsettling, and at the time, he couldn't have guessed that this elderly woman, Anelise, would eventually prove to be someone of immense importance. On the 3rd day following his rebirth, the protagonist woke up on the floor and slowly opened his eyes. He was startled to find an elderly woman standing before him, who immediately apologized for taking over his bed. Recalling their agreement from the previous day, he admitted she had startled him but reassured her he was fine, and when he asked how she was doing, she told him that seeing him had already made her feel better. Just then, a strange noise echoed, leading the protagonist to ask if her stomach was growling. When she remained silent, he took it as a sign that it was finally time for them to eat. As they headed downstairs, their meal was served. Noting the massive portions of the fish dishes, he suggested they split the plate between them. After asking the elderly woman if they should order a meat dish, the protagonist watched her eat and began to question her true identity, noting that her healthy teeth suggested she was still quite strong. When the protagonist addressed her as grandmother, she immediately corrected him, prompting him to use her name instead, though she insisted he add the prefix "san" when doing so. Toy asked about her familiarity with the dungeons, and after she confirmed her experience, he expressed his eagerness to learn everything she knew, which she was more than happy to share. The protagonist noted that although she appeared frail the day before, she seemed much more energetic now that she had avoided the mines, or perhaps she had simply been hungry. Upon using his analysis skill, he discovered the frail old woman was actually a high-level magician with stats that far surpassed his own. She walked him through the essentials for a newcomer, covering everything from dungeon gear and regulations to guild registration and the administrative process for exchanging cards and bounties for currency. The Explorers Guild consists almost entirely of melee fighters, making archers a rare sight, since students typically join the military and the high cost of arrows often bankrupts independent researchers. Bows are primarily used by the wealthy and the nobility. When the protagonist inquired about the standard group size of 5 or 6, she explained that it provided the ideal balance between combat strength and the fair distribution of spoils. Toy questioned the danger of entering the dungeon alone, but she warned him it was a reckless move without a scout, as beginners are often killed by hidden traps and sudden monster ambushes. Understanding that he needed to join a group first, he remained cautious about any slips that might reveal the secret of his reincarnation. Elise reassured him that they would be safe together, as her magic allowed her to detect any hidden traps or monsters. After questioning if she could truly pull it off, the protagonist realized that a magician's ability to handle multiple roles at once is exactly why they are so highly valued. Toa explained that one complication remained, making it difficult to bring her along to the dungeon. Although leaving her at the hotel seemed more practical, she had insisted on coming along, even if carrying her through the dungeon felt like a grueling task. Emily insisted he leave her behind if she became a burden, her desperation to enter the dungeon clearly fueling her resolve. Smiling, the protagonist expressed his understanding and agreed to join them, silently resolving to do everything in his power to succeed. Eventually, they arrived at the entrance of the dimly lit maze, where he realized he was finally standing before the first dungeon of his life. After passing through the portal, they reached the first floor, which was far more expansive and well-lit than the protagonist had expected. Anelise explained that they were on the entrance floor, a starting point where they could choose from several different routes. The corridors branch out and converge repeatedly, ultimately leading to a boss room that appears more like a virtual subspace than an actual physical dungeon. He advised the elderly woman to avoid overexerting herself and simply follow his lead, as he intended to handle the fighting alone. Meanwhile, realizing his current armor was too heavy, he swapped it for a lighter leather set. Startled by the sudden change, Anelise asked what had happened, and he explained it was a quick equip feature, a convenient function of his item box. The elderly woman questioned if his item box ability stemmed from his previous experience as a loader, but Toy clarified that it was actually an innate power. Anelise questioned whether his ability was a unique skill, and if his sword was forged from mithril, prompting him to ask if she truly grasped the significance of those rare traits making him exceptional. As he turned toward her, she appeared completely vacant, as if her spirit had departed, leading him to call out in an attempt to pull her back to reality. Anelise expressed her admiration, noting that both his prowess and his blade were exceptionally rare. She advised him to keep them hidden to avoid drawing unwanted envy, then directed his gaze forward. Turning around, he found a level 1 gray rat already upon him. Despite his plea for a moment to mentally prepare, he instinctively drew his sword and cut the monster to pieces the second it lunged. After confirming his success, a piece of rat meat dropped as loot. He noted that the creatures weren't particularly fast and realized that a single light strike from his sword would be more than enough to defeat them. Instructing the old woman to stay back and only offer guidance, he followed her gesture to find 2 rats standing before him, leaving him unsure of how to proceed. While the protagonist weighed his options for the first strike, Anelise took the initiative and unleashed her fire magic. Toy was surprised to see the defeated enemies drop loot in the form of sharp front teeth and rat meat, while the elderly woman noted that as a level 21, the first-floor monsters were no match for her. Drawing on her own experience as a swordsman, she offered to refine his technique, immediately correcting his stance and instructing him to put more weight behind his strikes. Struck by how impressive the grandmother was, he felt reassured that choosing her from among the other servants had been the right call. Reborn into this new world, he had yet to realize just how vital clearing the dungeons would be. Meanwhile, inside the castle of the royal capital of Margus, a final check was conducted to ensure that everyone was prepared. They clarified that 14 people, including 3 heroes led by Mr. Akaba, intended to enter the dungeon immediately. The others, including Sayaka, remained at the castle for the time being to focus on mastering the basics through their initial training. Surveying the assembly, the princess realized the group was divided perfectly between those with a criminal history and those without. Sayaka turned to Akaba to ask if she should prepare more thoroughly, but he questioned her instructions and referred to her as a chemist. A group of girls questioned the necessity of studying in this new world, arguing that it would be far more exciting and rewarding to simply follow the heroes instead. The hero of the Azure Sea, Iki Mizusawa, argued that charging into battle without understanding this world was reckless, preferring instead to first evaluate their current strengths and limits. Aplaba spat out a curse, mocking their weakness and declaring that they would remain trapped there for the rest of their lives. The princess observed that he appeared to be a natural leader in this world as well, and while his remaining supporters were acting with caution and showing promise, she realized the true problem lay elsewhere. Among the group of 10 heroes, their leader was notably distinct from the rest. His record card detailed a history of serious offenses ranging from assault and blackmail to arson. He clearly lacks any concern for the interests of others, proving to be a dangerous figure who doesn't hesitate to treat even his allies with cruelty. Even if he managed to conquer the dungeon, there was no promise his allies wouldn't turn on him the moment their whims shifted. The hero class's potent skills will likely carry them through the early floors effortlessly. But once teamwork becomes essential, a difficult question begins to emerge. The government officially announced the state-funded hero summoning ritual to the entire nation, marking it as a critical project where failure was not an option. The princess remarked that the dungeons in the royal capital are rumored to be far more difficult than others, prompting Akaba to immediately ask for clarification. Her mother had maintained from the start that there was no need to rush, advising them to avoid overexerting themselves and to have the courage to retreat if they felt overwhelmed. Akaba reacted with frustration, arguing that these are the exact moments that define a true hero. Recognizing that they possessed only reckless courage, the princess wondered if she could guide them toward becoming true heroes. The situation grew more intriguing as it became clear that everyone involved held their own perspective on the matter. These reflections belonged to the goddess, who observed the world from above and offered her well wishes to the heroes. By this point, several days had passed since the protagonist and the elderly woman first began exploring the maze on the dungeon's first floor together. Choosing to play it safe, the group focused on leveling up on the first floor, where they efficiently cleared out the gray rat infestations with their well-prepared equipment. Having grown more experienced and higher in level, he could now easily manage groups of weaker monsters on his own, though he owed much of this to Anelise, who used her magical perception to scout enemies ahead of time. Typically, monsters in the dungeon vanish upon defeat, leaving only their loot behind, though they occasionally drop rare and valuable items that are quite a find. Despite the physical strain her age put on their journey, Anelise never once complained, leading him to schedule more frequent rests before eventually addressing her by name to discuss a certain matter. After he explained the situation, she questioned if he could truly change classes on his own, though she suggested they eat first, a plan he readily agreed to. Anelise explained that changing classes usually requires a temple visit and a significant fee, but he noted that his analysis skill's unique functions allowed him to bypass those requirements. When the elderly woman asked for clarification, the protagonist confirmed he had been discussing his analysis skill. She reacted with surprise, asking if he truly possessed an analysis skill and how many unique abilities he had in total. Ultimately, Anelise questioned his true identity, as his possession of a mithril sword made it clear he was no mere traveler. He tried to reassure her by promising a full explanation later, though internally he admitted he didn't quite understand the situation himself yet. With the first-floor boss battle looming, he consulted her to see if he should change his class before the fight. Re-examining his options, he realized the Explorer class had become available, specializing in dungeon navigation and treasure hunting. Anelise questioned him once more about his role as a researcher, adding that she genuinely considered it a fantastic career path. While the researcher is a sophisticated auxiliary class equipped with valuable skills like danger, premonition, and increased loot drops, its lack of combat capabilities means it is rarely put to use. When the protagonist questioned the strength of his new class, she explained that it was far superior to common roles like villager or traveler, offering faster leveling and greater profitability, much to his satisfaction. While standing near the entrance on the ground floor, he decided to begin his first-class shift and selected a researcher. Once the decision was finalized, his appearance shifted slightly, as a stylish pair of glasses now rested on his forehead, a change the elderly woman found quite endearing. Following this, the protagonist activated his dungeon traversal skill, extending his arms as a shroud of magic enveloped his entire body. Upon activating his magic, a wooden door equipped with a handle materialized on the wall directly in front of them. As he opened the door, he felt as though he were stepping into another dimension, realizing that truly anything was possible in this world, though he was stunned to find himself right back where they had previously returned from. Anelise explained that the door could be placed anywhere, though it would vanish after a single use, leading him to realize just how powerful this cheat skill actually was. Although the technique consumed a significant amount of mana, he had more than enough for the return trip. This would save them precious time and, more importantly, spare the elderly woman from exhaustion, leaving him puzzled as to why the others hadn't utilized it themselves. This investigator class is typically reserved for veteran adventurers looking for a quick sweep, requiring one to reach the 10th floor or defeat 10 monsters solo, but he had already inadvertently met a hidden condition. Turning back to the elderly woman, he noticed her spirit drifting from her body once more, prompting him to call out her name and urge her to return to the physical world. After explaining her brush with death, she offered an apology, admitting that the rapid-fire surprises had nearly left her breathless. To avoid potential complications, Anelise advised him to keep his class changes and dungeon activities a secret, a point he fully agreed with. He expressed his satisfaction with the new class and noted they could leave early once the subject box was sorted, before turning to ask the elderly woman if she was hungry. She apologized for overstepping her boundaries as a servant before inquiring if he was truly a hero. Visibly unsettled by her inquiry, the protagonist abruptly looked away and questioned her reasoning before giving a firm denial. Anelise revealed that prior to her arrival in Kelnifi, she had been a servant in the capital, where she overheard whispers regarding a large-scale hero summoning. While only 1 in 10,000 people possess multiple rare skills, she knew such a feat was impossible for any ordinary individual, leading her to suspect he might be connected to the heroes. After apologizing, she asked him to disregard her previous comments as he observed the elderly woman. He had been the one to bring her to the dungeon, and no matter who he truly was, she would always view him as her benefactor. Anelise admitted she was unsure how much time she had left, but she promised to remain grateful to him for the rest of her life. Looking at her with a heavy heart, the protagonist spoke her name, prepared to finally confess the truth. A sudden, strange sensation washed over him, and when she questioned what was wrong, he admitted he wasn't entirely sure, though it appeared his treasure hunting skill had just been triggered. Approaching the wall, Tui insisted that their objective lay behind it, though his companion noted that her magical perception couldn't detect any hidden doors. Hearing this, he asked if he should simply use physical force to break through. Anelise stepped forward to try, channeling her entire magical reserve into a massive fist using her physical mana hand technique. Shattering the wall with a single punch, he revealed a hidden chamber containing a treasure chest. He remarked on its costly appearance, and Anelise noted that it was clearly a high-tier chest, a rare discovery for the dungeon's first floor. While her magic didn't detect any active spells, She warned that mechanical traps like poison needles could still be present. She offered to take the lead if he felt uneasy, but he assured her that he could handle it. Feeling an inexplicable connection to the chest, the protagonist sensed it was meant for him and declared that he would be the one to open it. The chest opened with surprising ease, revealing a bottle within that prompted him to inquire about its purpose. As the protagonist detailed the bottle's transparent appearance and speculated it was a potion, Anelise's shock only deepened with every word he spoke. After she collapsed to the floor, the man questioned her about the situation, prompting the elderly woman to reveal the truth of what was happening, a reality she found hard to believe actually existed. Toei questioned the item's rarity, only to discover it was a curse-lifting potion found exclusively in dungeons. Because it cannot be artificially produced, its value exceeds 100 million gilla. Turning to Anelise, the protagonist questioned if this was the true reason she had been so determined to enter the dungeon. Seeking clarification, he asked if searching for the potion was what had truly led her into the dungeon, and she confirmed it as her body began to tremble. She explained that her transformed body made exploring the dungeon impossible, and her attempt to create one herself resulted in a catastrophic failure. He approached her to ask about the potion, but she quickly interrupted him, explaining that the item was exceptionally rare and only appeared on the market once a year, if at all. She asked him to take the item to Golteo to trade for money, content for now just knowing it existed and hoping she might be able to buy it for herself one day. The elderly woman urged him to think rationally, explaining that selling the item would grant him enough wealth to hire an entire workforce rather than squandering it on a basic servant worth 200,000 gorillas. The protagonist confirmed that everything was clear, then asked if she truly wanted him to spend the resources on himself. The man declared he wouldn't trade the item for money, but just as he began to open the bottle, Anelise called out to him. After confirming that the potion was safe to use on his friend, the protagonist began pouring the liquid directly over Anelise's head. Caught off guard, the elderly woman tried to turn toward him to ask for an explanation. She was unable to finish as a coughing fit took over, making her poor health obvious and leading Toe to immediately ask if this was a normal occurrence. Realizing her body couldn't handle the potion's intensity, he cursed himself for not administering it in smaller doses. Noticing her body was burning with heat, the protagonist called out her name just as a sudden brilliant light illuminated the entire room. As the light finally faded, he discovered a young girl in his arms and immediately asked for her identity. Toi blushed as he called her name, feeling an uncharacteristic sense of tenderness. She responded to the name and confirmed his words, leaving him to wonder if she was simply too beautiful. Averting his gaze, the protagonist expressed how happy he was for her, just as the girl realized her lack of clothing and apologized for the state she was in. Toy was stunned to see her transform from a withered grandmother into a beautiful young woman, realizing the effect was far more powerful than he had anticipated. While he had anticipated a similar outcome, the sheer scale of the difference left him struggling to process the situation in real time. Anelise realized he had already seen her undressed while cleaning her the previous day, making it feel far too late to act indignant now. She suggested they head back to the hotel, and he agreed, noting that she also needed to change her clothes. The protagonist reflected on the convenience of his dungeon movement skill as they quickly arrived at the hotel and headed to their room. It soon dawned on him that he would be sharing a room with this beautiful woman, who was now officially his servant. 2 weeks have passed since their arrival in this world, and Sayaka has been assigned the Alchemist Class, an industrial profession not intended for combat. In addition to alchemists, the world is home to herbalists, blacksmiths, and other artisans who refine their respective trades within specialized workshops. The girl announced that the magic potion was finally complete, while her companion expressed relief that their efforts had been successful. Rather than venturing into the dungeon herself, Psyche's role is to ensure the team is fully equipped with all the necessary gear and supplies. The hero of the Azure Sea and several combat research specialists are undergoing rigorous training to refine their abilities before being organized into parties for the upcoming dungeon raids. Meanwhile, on the 3rd floor of Joel's labyrinth within the Metropolitan Dungeon, Ahaba questioned if the team had grown arrogant. He urged the scouts to perform their duties properly, explaining that their negligence was the reason they were being constantly ambushed. One of the men argued that he wasn't making impossible demands, but since they were already burdened with all the gear, he questioned how they were also expected to fight. He reiterated that fighting conventionally under these circumstances was impossible, while the exhausted girls on the sidelines asked if they could finally head back now that the match had concluded. Akaba remarked that the girls were already in a dire state, asserting that they were to blame for their own predicament due to their reckless and indiscriminate use of magic. He strictly commanded them to stay put and wait for his signal before advancing any further. The Golden Hero explained why he had been putting on airs, but Hayate countered by calling him weak and accusing him of merely pretending to be a leader. Hearing this, Akaba immediately turned toward them and asked if they had said something. Soon after, infighting broke out among the group, much to the annoyance of the female onlookers who were tired of the constant cycle. Meanwhile, the remaining survivors shifted their focus to the looming threat of an enemy return. Upon returning to this castle, the princess questioned if internal bickering had triggered another retreat, though she noted with some relief that their caution had at least kept everyone alive. Inside the laboratory, an herbalist named Konomi Mukumura checked on Sayaka, asking if she was feeling exhausted and suggesting she take some time to rest. Sayaka thanked her and decided to stay behind to work a bit longer, prompting Konomi to ask if she was actually worried about the protagonist. She admitted they rarely spoke, leaving her with little information about him other than the fact that he stopped attending school after a fire broke out at his home. She speculated that since he wasn't with them, he might not have been transported to this world at all, while Sayaka admitted she initially thought he was present but couldn't be entirely sure. Recalling how he had once aided her, she felt it was her turn to return the favor and decided to set out in search of him. After Sayaka admitted she might be imposing her own selfish desires, a sharp glint flickered in Konomi's eyes. After reassuring her that she was doing fine, she handed over the potion and told her to drink it, expressing how proud she was of the chemist's impressive growth. Sayaka admitted she had completely misunderstood the situation, realizing her only true desire was to see him and speak with him once more. Meanwhile, in the city of Kelnifi, located 1,000 kilometers southeast of the capital, rumors were spreading that traces of a high-ranking chest had been discovered on the first floor the previous day. Realizing they still had an opportunity on the first floor, they wondered who could have found him. But because reporting to the guild isn't mandatory, details about the finder and the discovery remained a mystery. One of the men admitted he would have also kept the discovery a secret, noting just how fortunate the finder had been. Startled, the protagonist bolted upright in bed, questioning his surroundings and wondering if he was in a hotel or simply trapped in a dream. Believing he was trapped in a surreal dream due to the change in Anelise, he was suddenly pulled back to reality by a soft sensation nearby. Confirming that this was no dream, he recalled how the elderly woman had transformed, now appearing as a young girl. Following the events of the previous night, Anelise broke down in tears, likely overwhelmed by the relief of regaining her youth, and it was a difficult situation to manage. It's hardly surprising that her pent-up emotions are finally surfacing, now that she's free from the constant fear of dying from old age. He went as far as tending to her with a damp towel, and since she refused to let him leave, he remained by her side until she finally settled down. The protagonist assumed that nothing had changed, and he felt reasonably certain his assessment was correct. He woke her up for breakfast and mentioned their upcoming shopping trip, offering her some of his spare clothes to wear for the time being. The girl woke up, rubbed her eyes, called out to him, and then realized that she was on the bed without clothes. She immediately dropped to her knees to apologize to the protagonist, before questioning if they were truly responsible for what had happened. As panic began to set in for him, the girl continued, explaining that a lowly servant like herself could never hope to repay his kindness, even after 300 years. The protagonist urged her to stay calm, reassuring her that she didn't owe him any debt of gratitude. Toyastra dismissed the talk of masters and servants, insisting she simply helped someone in need because a potion happened to be conveniently nearby. He explained that her longevity would be a mutual success, urging the weeping girl to take his words to heart for both their sakes. A short while later, they headed down for breakfast, where he assumed she was eating heavily to build her strength, only to realize she just had a massive appetite. The protagonist laughed as he looked at her, noting that Anelise was still the same as ever, while she apologized and simply commented on how delicious the meal was. After observing her, he concluded that she simply needed to eat more, then asked if they were heading out to buy equipment. A short while later, they arrived at the Golteo trading house, where the girl tried on a new outfit that he found quite impressive. When she asked for his thoughts, he privately noted that she had finally started to resemble a mature older sister. After finishing their shopping, they returned to the dungeon, where the girl noted how light her body felt and how much her magic had improved as she effortlessly dispatched every enemy in their path. As a volley of arrows flew their way, she urged the protagonist to take cover while she expertly parried every shot with her blade. Anelise apologized, explaining that her magic was too potent and had triggered long-range traps, before asking if he had sustained any injuries. She explained that her previous experience with a rapier made deflecting arrows with a staff effortless, leaving Toy to wonder about her true identity, since she seemed to outmatch him even in close combat. He had assumed her vast knowledge and high level were the results of age, but discovering she was only 18 made him wonder if she was actually a genius. Recognizing the true extent of her hard work, the protagonist's expression shifted to one of complete seriousness. Determined to make an attempt, he realized he first needed to catch up with Anelise. As they neared the boss's chamber, the man began to feel anxious, but the elf reassured him that her mithril sword would be enough to handle the threat if they kept their composure. He explained that he would try to manage the situation on his own, requesting her backup only if things took a turn for the worse. The first-floor boss, a massive rat, unexpectedly appeared on the 6th level. As the rat charges toward him, he notes that it possesses a level of speed that defies its small stature. Grateful that his armor had held up, he shifted his focus to defense to better analyze its movements. The young man observed a distinct pattern in her strikes. Recognizing it as a typical trait of a magical creature, he finally saw through her tactics, realizing she would deliver 2 quick strikes before accelerating to full speed. Seizing the initiative, the hero decides to launch an immediate counterattack. He celebrated securing the victory single-handedly, earning high praise from the elf for his impressive performance. Upon clearing the first floor, a notification appeared as rewards dropped, consisting of elite rat meat and a large rat's tail. He was pleased to see his level rise, especially since it meant a new class had finally been unlocked. Filled with excitement, the hero realized that the thrill of exploring a real dungeon far surpassed anything he had ever experienced in a game. Hoping to test the limits of his new class, he weighed the idea of facing the boss one more time. She explained that entering from the rear would prevent the boss from spawning, since the encounter is restricted to once per day. He suddenly realizes that dungeon movement is an option he can utilize. He theorized that by returning to the boss's chamber, he might be able to trigger its reappearance. Just as the hero felt satisfied that everything had gone according to plan, the boss unexpectedly resurfaced. He was thrilled to realize he could now farm the boss battle to quickly gather loot and upgrade his gear. Exhaustion finally set in for the young man after he cleared the dungeon more than 10 times, having depleted his entire stock of potions in the process. He felt a sense of satisfaction, although the struggle was intense. The exceptional loot and experience he gained led to a massive boost in his stats. She complimented him, noting that while his swordplay was clearly that of a novice, his mastery over his skills was surprisingly advanced. Uji recognized that this was simply knowledge he had carried over from his past world. With the loot sold and their funds secured, the hero suggested they head out for dinner to celebrate his recovery. Taking him by the hand, the elf began to address him as her master. Anelise pointed out that they had been followed ever since they stepped out of the guild. Sensing their surroundings, the elf reveals that 3 individuals are tailing them, leaving the young man terrified that someone from his previous world has finally caught up. Ruling out the guild and the guards, she suspects they are dealing with bandits and decides they should follow them in total silence. The elf suggests they separate within the crowded area, but the man explains that even a fleeting glance would allow his assessment skill to pick up on vital information. After purchasing some fried squid from a convenience store, he subjected the snack to a detailed assessment. They finally caught sight of the thieves who were pursuing them. The elf confirmed that the area was clear of any threats, leading the man to suggest they eat in their room for safety, feeling glad he had already purchased some squid. Puzzled by the sudden attack, he suspected that someone had witnessed him uncovering a rare chest. Recalling the way he had tended to the injuries, he finally began to understand the reason behind it. Stunned by the situation, Anelise requested that he slice the gang leader in half right there on the road. Still looking confused, Yuji confirmed that the entire situation had been an accident. The hero reflected on the time he and Golteo crossed paths with a group of bandits, prompting him to assist the guards in fending them off. He assumed everyone had been killed, but he wondered if anyone might have actually survived and escaped. She explained that they harbored a grudge, blaming him entirely for the failure of their attack. The heroine explains that the city's criminal underworld is largely tied to the Chardina Gang, an organization notorious for their frequent robberies. She clarified that her motives weren't personal. Rather, because he had tarnished their organization's reputation, they were now obligated to seek retribution. She suspects his identity was compromised through the guild, or an information exchange, leaving him in despair as his previous good deeds have only led to his persecution. Despite the ruler's reputation for being honest and firm, crime remains difficult to control in a city that attracts those seeking underground fortunes, providing the perfect cover for criminals to vanish. Yuji realized that no one was above suspicion, as even the guards could have been compromised by bribes. The hero blamed himself for his reckless behavior, lamenting how his lack of foresight always seems to ruin everything. She offered him some reassurance, affirming that he had made the right choice. The elf explained that their meeting was only possible because he had stepped in to save Golteo. She offered reassurance, stating that there was no reason to be concerned. She asserted that regardless of how many thieves appeared, she would drive them all back. Anelise explains that thieves are only a threat in large numbers. Since their profession is automatically assigned upon committing a crime, they lack high-level skills and must rely on group tactics. She explained that becoming stronger is the best way to eliminate fear, noting that focusing on personal training is the safest option, especially since there are now bounties on their heads. After apologizing, she suggested they eat the squid while it was still warm. She mentioned that fried squid was a local specialty, and after sampling it, he found the dish to be quite delicious. The hero realized that if he let every watchful eye intimidate him, he would never be able to lead a normal life in this new world. As he rubbed the sleep from his eyes, he was greeted by the elf wishing him a good morning. She asked if he had been awake all night, and after he explained that he finally managed to get some rest in the morning, she decided their current hotel was perfectly fine and didn't need to be changed. He felt certain that Golteo wouldn't betray them. But as they reached the dungeon entrance, the sound of a large, restless crowd caught their attention. Surprised by the sight, Yuji noted that the scene appeared to be some sort of celebration. She clarifies that the dungeon's layout resets monthly, and since the reconstruction finished just yesterday, treasure hunters have already begun to assemble. Upon spotting the jewelry dealer, Anelise offers to inspect his collection, and the young man agrees to let her evaluate the pieces. Stumbling upon an intriguing discovery, he presented the earrings to Anelise, noting how perfectly they would suit her. The hero explained that the magical earrings would amplify her power and encouraged her to try them on, to which she bashfully agreed. Once she put the earring on, she flushed with embarrassment and tentatively asked for an opinion on her appearance. He complimented her, noting how well they suited her, and she warmly promised to take good care of them. Yuju tried to convince himself it was merely a gift from the owner, but his visible panic quickly made the situation uncomfortable. Anelise then inquired if she could select something for her master in return. 20 minutes later, she finally selected a necklace for him, but he was unable to identify the item because its level was far too low. Believing the necklace to be harmless, the young man decided to purchase it for her. She expressed her gratitude and put it on, even though she hadn't been able to analyze its properties yet. Feeling a bit self-conscious, he asks Anelise if they're drawing too much attention to themselves. A pair of adventurers approached with an invitation to join their group, though the man suspected they were merely putting on an act. Reacting to the proposal, Anelise countered by asking if they would prefer a fireball instead. He found himself captivated by Anelise's striking appearance and perfect physique, while she maintained that her master possessed a much gentler nature. Upon reaching the dungeon entrance, he was relieved to find no thieves in sight, and decided it was time to head inside. After making his way inside, he decided it was finally time to inspect his new class. Upon activating the class change, he officially became a hero specialized in wielding a two-handed sword. Stunned by the revelation of the hero class, Anelise explained that such rare professions possess a level of power usually reserved for the heroes of legend. He observed his impressive base stats and a collection of useful starting skills, including auto-healing. The young man describes how the command skill enhances the entire party's strength, leaving Anelise thoroughly impressed. He decided to test the effectiveness of his newly acquired skill, the cutting punch. Surprised to see a ranged strike, the hero noted a slight delay in the impact, though he found the visual execution quite impressive. Explaining that the first level would be far too crowded, he decided they should head straight to the second. Upon reaching the second level of the maze, he noticed that the environment looked almost identical to the first. Uji stopped in his tracks at the sight of a tree, questioning how such a thing could possibly grow inside the dungeon. As the Ashen Golem and Grey Rat emerged before them, he quickly warned Anelise to stay on her guard. He assessed that while the golem was slow, its synergy with the agile rats would make the battle quite difficult. Uji was thrilled with the strength of his new class, as it allowed him to conserve potions and provided a weapon bonus that made his two-handed mithril sword feel effortless to wield. He proposed heading straight for the second-level boss, a plan that Anelise quickly accepted. Upon entering the second floor's boss chamber, they are met by a level 7 Ash Galen and a level 6 Rat Boss. Anticipating a wide attack range, the hero realized the Rat Boss would likely strike the moment he moved within reach. Rather than engaging head-on, he strikes the Rat Boss with a precise cutting blow. Recognizing the slow Golem as a perfect opening, the young man seized the opportunity and struck. A notification appeared announcing their effortless victory, confirming they had cleared the second floor in a single night and secured the boss's loot. He opted to take a short break before challenging the boss again to continue his leveling process. Noticing the gathering crowd, he halts his approach to the boss, while Anelise feels relieved that the underground effect will allow them to push even deeper. She explained that these expeditions are typically quite lengthy, as trekking to the second-level boss and back takes hours, especially when weighed down by all the necessary supplies. She explains that seasoned adventurers often hire porters to sustain themselves in the dungeon for days, a detail that leaves him visibly surprised. Uji asks how time is measured in this place, and with a grin, she explains that her internal clock tells her it's nearly sunset. He decided to wrap things up for the day, and the girl agreed that gaining 2 levels in a single session was an impressive achievement. Upon stepping outside, he was startled to find that evening had already arrived, while Anelise turned toward him with a worried expression. Spotting a group of suspicious individuals at the gate, the hero decided to avoid them and skip his visit to the guild for the day, a choice his companion fully supported. Yuji tightened his fist in anger, resenting the fact that he had to live once more as he cast a glance over his shoulder. While he was certain his hero class would allow him to handle the situation, the young man remained disheartened, feeling it was pointless to stir up unnecessary hatred. Elise urged him to stay calm, reminding him that by combining his analysis with her magical sense, they could safely navigate around any potential threats. She boldly asserts their superiority, warning that she'll personally take down anyone who causes trouble, a point he readily agrees with. He felt uneasy about their lack of numbers, as there were only 2 of them remaining. He considered everyone he knew for help, but found that all the capable guards had already departed. That left only his recent toy as an alternative, though he refused to consider it a viable option. With their recent profits, he suggests hiring an additional combatant, a move she supports since having an employee would make it easier to keep their secrets safe. Despite his reluctance, the hero realizes this is their only option, reasoning that Anelise's resources will make it easy enough to hire a replacement later. Having reached a decision, the young man planned for them to visit Mr. Goldhalla's shop the following day. The scene transitions to the western district of Kelnifi, an area dominated by its slums. The woman questioned the man, asking exactly when he planned to bring the girl to her. The man replied that it wouldn't be long, noting that their increased surveillance confirmed she was definitely heading to the Explorers Guild. Pressing her weight down on his hand, the hooded woman warned that if he didn't hurry, he would lose his remaining arm as well. The leader of the Chardina gang ordered her subordinates to bring the mysterious toy to her immediately, promising she would personally oversee its care. The hero stepped forward and offered a greeting to Gulteosin. Galtea responded, explaining that he had been expecting their arrival. Gulteo inquired if they were searching for another worker, just as he caught sight of Anelise. The man anxiously inquired about the item's source, causing the other to hesitate before admitting that something had happened. Galte was stunned, struck by a sudden sense of recognition as if he had seen her somewhere before. He explained her identity as Anelise and noted that much had transpired, leaving Gulteo stunned and questioning if he had known the truth from the very beginning. The hero requested total discretion, and Gulteo assured him that protecting client information was a matter of professional reputation they were bound to uphold. He gradually regained his composure, reassured that no information would ever leak from Gulteo's shop. Noticing the young man's significant progress over the last 2 weeks, Gulteo remarks that his intuition was correct and urges them to finally get down to business. Prior to purchasing the new worker, she turned toward Anelise, mentioning that she had something to share. Yuji admits that during their last conversation about professions, he was unable to give a definitive answer. He finally opened up to her about his secret, revealing that his actual profession was that of a reborn hero. The young man confirmed her suspicions were correct, leaving her flustered as she realized she had been rescued by such a handsome hero. She questioned whether his title as a reborn hero meant he had actually been reincarnated from another world. The hero confirmed he was reborn alone in Kelnifi, and while she understood the origin of his unique skills, she remained surprisingly ignorant of more basic information. Anelise questioned if he had parted ways with his comrades, and he confirmed that he had personally cut ties, wanting nothing more to do with them. Toa decided to conceal his identity as a hero, choosing to set aside his profession to avoid drawing any unwanted attention to himself. He apologized for his perceived cowardice, but she quickly reassured him, stating she was proud to stand by his side. As the hero finished speaking with Gulteo, the man remarked on how strange it was for him to be buying workers, but the protagonist remained firm, stating that his requirements were perfectly clear. He specified his requirements for the new hires, seeking non-criminals who were ready for combat regardless of their profession, all within a budget of 400,000 grills. Gulteo asked for their patience while he selected the candidates, noting his preference for workers who could start a new profession from the ground up. As the man presented the candidates, he explained that based on their specific requirements, non-human representatives were the most suitable choices. Fascinated by the wide array of races, including elves, dwarves, and beastmen, he struggled to decide which one to choose. The hero's attention was drawn to a powerful draconian, a frail elf, and a small child. Upon seeing the goblin, the young man realized that in this world, they weren't mere monsters, but an intelligent race. Gulteo reveals that the goblin was sold by his parents after failing to find work at age 20, leaving the man to reflect on the weight of that decision. While Anelise trusted his judgment, he hesitated, concerned that a draconian would draw too much attention, and turned his focus toward another intriguing candidate. After making his decision, he informed Golteo that he would take the goblin for 80,000 grills. Stunned by the unconventional choice, Golteo noted how peculiar it was for a goblin to aspire to become the king of hand-to-hand combat. Assuring everyone that things were under control, the hero requested a contract be drafted, noting that he had discovered something rather intriguing. Golteo promised to handle the arrangements immediately, though he privately wondered if an elf and a goblin could truly find common ground. Noticing her calm demeanor, she explains that her parents were free of prejudice, and reveals that she is actually a half-elf. After the hero finalized the contract, Anelise asked if he had missed a crucial detail, revealing that the goblin was actually female. She stood in shock as he failed to realize that she was actually a goblin girl. He suspected that Golteo found his tastes a bit peculiar, though the merchant nonetheless thanked him for the business. He inquired about selling materials at the shop, and Golteo explained that they offer better rates for rare items than the guild, making it a highly convenient arrangement. Golteo cautioned him about the city's dangerous elements, advising him to reach out if trouble arose since merchants are always the first to pick up on local rumors. The hero offered his thanks and insisted that everything was under control, suspecting that Golteo was already fully aware of the situation and wanting to avoid falling deeper into his debt. After the introductions are finished, Rosarina responds with an enthusiastic promise to do her very best. Toys advised him to gear up first before heading into the dungeon to increase his level. Rosarina expressed her excitement at finally being able to fight, prompting a laugh from him as Anelise noted her intense enthusiasm. Although she expressed a desire to fight with her bare hands, he insisted she use the mithril sword and prepared a spare for himself. Toy asked Anelise to restrain one of the monsters with her magic, and she complied by manifesting her mana arm. He commanded Rosarina to eliminate the rat and clear the shield bays. She cheered in delight, noticing that her level had finally increased. After offering her some praise, he noted that they would be picking up the pace today, a sentiment Anelise and Rosarina quickly agreed with. Gasping for air, the hero offered Rosarina his praise, but she simply replied that she was still brimming with energy, leaving him in awe of her stamina. Noticing the long queue for the boss, he suggests they take a break, prompting Rosarina to ask about their next move. As Rosarina savored the fried squid, Elise reminded her to remain discreet about their master's extraordinary talents around outsiders. Rosarina, meanwhile, relishes the opportunity to battle and enjoy a good meal. Her prowess leaves him stunned, with Anali even noting that she handles a blade better than he does. She revealed that fighting had always been her dream, leading her to constantly practice combat through mental visualization even after she began working. She shared her ambition to become the ultimate combat champion, but because her constant training led her to neglect her daily duties, she was eventually sold. He offers Rosarina some words of encouragement regarding her level, but their moment is cut short by a beastman mocking their choice to travel with a goblin. The beastman taunted Rosarina, asserting that the goblin was incapable of handling the boss. Annalie coldly proposed investigating who was truly participating in the children's games, even as the beastmen continued to issue threats. The beastmen questioned if they were looking for trouble, reminding them that they had insulted his friend first, only for the man to suddenly grab him by the ear. A massive bear beastman intercepts them, offering an apology for his companion's lack of restraint. The beastman bear details the ancient rivalry between his friend's tribe and the goblins, warning that the novice clearly underestimates the threat he is dealing with. As the man evaluated a group of beastmen, Rosarina apologized, feeling responsible for the situation due to her heritage. He consoled Rosarina, insisting she wasn't at fault while stating that prejudiced individuals like the wolf beast should be dealt with through force. Watching her in action, the young man was impressed by Rosarina's natural combat skills, noting that she was more than capable of handling herself without any assistance. Rosarina asked if she could fight using only her bare hands, and he gave her his consent. As the goblin fought with his bare hands, she cried out, exhilarated by the intense feeling of being alive. He suggests that the fighter class would be a perfect fit for her, just as Alice notices she has reached level 10, signaling that a major change is about to occur. The hero reveals that his skill identified a major turning point. Upon reaching level 10, goblins evolve and experience a massive surge in their overall power. He further explains that an automatic class change occurs at this stage, assigning the most suitable role based on a combination of luck and innate talent. The hero proclaims that she is leveling up as a brilliant light suddenly envelops Rosarina, causing her to cry out. As the light faded, Rosarina emerged in a new form, excitedly proclaiming that she had successfully evolved. She was overjoyed to finally be a full-fledged goblin fighter, proudly displaying her new horns and her battlemaster status. Both Anelise and her companion are left in total shock by the transformation, but Rosarina confirms it's really her, noting how much taller she's become. The girl complimented Rosarina on her striking beauty, while he silently took note of her tall, model-like physique. While Rosarina marvels at her newfound agility, he suddenly realizes with a sense of dread that he has become the weakest member of their rapidly strengthening group. He explained that Rosarina had evolved into a goblin fighter, while also gaining a unique and powerful profession as a master of hand-to-hand combat. The hero explains that her profession restricts her from using weapons, yet her unarmed attacks are exceptionally powerful, especially when her fighting spirit skill provides a temporary boost to her stats. Toy observes that her high agility allows her to effortlessly evade strikes, making her the perfect fit for an evasion tank who draws enemy attention while remaining untouched. He felt incredibly fortunate to have Anelise and Rosarina by his side, convinced that he might possess a hidden luck skill, or the divine protection of the goddess herself. Noticing that half a month has passed since his rebirth, the young man feels the biting chill of the approaching winter, though Rosarina assures him she is doing just fine. She expressed concern about having to bathe in cold water, so he suggested they request heated water and rent a separate room for the girls. Elise firmly objects, arguing that she can't guarantee his safety from a separate room, which leads Rosarina to suggest sleeping on the floor instead. He pointed out that the room was furnished with only a single bed. He recalled how they both firmly rejected his suggestion to sleep on the floor, insisting it was out of the question. He noted that their advancement through the 3rd level proceeded without any complications. As he becomes entangled in a spiderweb, Anelise anxiously checks to see if he is all right. He realized that the monsters on this level were spiders, a discovery he found deeply unsettling. He observed that Rosarina seemed completely unfazed by the web, even as he struggled to fend off the relentless barrage of attacks coming from every direction. Infuriated by the spider's method of spinning its web, he was stunned to see a simple strand of cotton fall out instead. Anelise explains that trading dungeon cotton thread is a standard practice, noting that the city's regulations keep the market price steady. The hero realized the industry was integrated into the dungeon specifically to regulate the monster population, a strategy he found quite impressive. After returning to the hotel, he handed a rope to Anelise and asked for her assistance in testing out one of his abilities. Smiling, he asked her to bind him with the rope as securely as she possibly could. Panicking, she frantically clarified that her motivations went far beyond a mere hobby. He explained that he was simply testing whether he could escape from potential bandits or successfully retrieve the item box. The young man successfully placed the cobweb sword into the drawer, feeling a sense of satisfaction that his experiment had worked out. He realized that if the web didn't travel fast enough, it could be intercepted mid-air before reaching its target. Toy realized that the material was a genuine spiderweb rather than cotton, discovering that he could even manipulate it himself. Anelise clarifies that a standard storage box is unable to contain anything in motion or lacking a fixed shape. She explained that his unique box skill maintains perfect temperature and freshness, though it is unable to store living creatures. An idea struck him, prompting him to prepare a boss encounter to test her true capabilities. Faced with the massive spider boss, he decided to handle the fight solo and asked Rosarina to keep her distance. He confidently asserts that regardless of the species, all spiders share a singular weakness before activating his object box. Rosarina was taken aback by his use of magic, but he clarified that he was wielding Anelise's power, which he had just extracted from the box. He realized this was the ultimate advantage, as stockpiling offensive spells in advance allowed him to strike without any personal risk. He eventually concluded that life in this alternative world was all about the item box, especially since defeating bosses yielded such a meager amount of experience. He was pleased to see the new profession finally unlock after successfully meeting all the necessary conditions. Frustrated by the lack of fairness, Rosarina demanded a one-on-one duel, but he reassured her that she would get her chance next time. After clearing the 3rd floor, they made quick work of the 4th, steadily increasing their levels as they advanced. He views leveling up as a genuine thrill, and thanks to Rosarina, he has the freedom to maintain his seeker profession to keep collecting its unique bonuses. As the formic acid makes contact, Elise explains that while it doesn't deal direct damage, it will ruin their equipment. He grumbled about being covered in grime, but after restocking his supplies, he was told to wait until they reached the hotel for warm water. With a sigh, he briefly wondered what the heroes were up to in the castle, though he quickly decided it wasn't his concern. 1,000 kilometers away in the kingdom's capital, someone let out a sudden sneeze. While the girl was relaxing in a bath within the royal palace, she was suddenly interrupted by an unexpected visitor. Elmita mentions her habit of using the pool late at night, while Seika explains that she is simply kept busy by her various responsibilities. Seika states she has no intention of interfering, prompting Elmita to reassure her and ease her concerns. Addressing her by name, Elmita offers to have a brief chat if she is willing. Saika suspects that the princess remembers everyone except the hero, and she is willing to talk as long as she is considered a suitable person for the conversation. Admiring the deep connection between magic and alchemy, she finds the concept of a science-based world fascinating, as she can hardly imagine an existence where magic doesn't exist. Elmita inquired if Saika had been searching for someone during the draft, prompting a flustered Saika to claim she had likely just imagined the whole thing. Saika reasoned that if Fujimi-kun wanted to keep his distance from Akabana, then informing the princess wouldn't be a good idea. Elmeda expressed her gratitude to Saika, noting that her potions were highly valued by the soldiers and had significantly bolstered the palace's supplies. Despite summoning Saika without her consent, the girl still expressed concern and urged her not to overexert herself. Sayaka explained her fondness for experimenting, noting that the princess's words had helped settle her nerves. After the girl questioned her about the heroes, Elmida let out a heavy sigh, acknowledging that they were indeed a major problem. Elmida expressed her frustration over the heroes' constant infighting, the mistreatment of staff, and the reckless waste of resources, all while managing daily grievances from investors. She pointed out that the lack of progress was the main issue, as the heroes were unable to clear the 3rd level and showed no interest in cooperating. Elmeda offered an apology for her earlier complaints, which Seika dismissed with a reassuring smile, insisting that everything was fine. The girl explained that the hero of the prophecies would arrive shortly, expressing her hope that his team would follow soon after. Psycho Strong assured everyone that the production classes would provide the heroes with all their necessary equipment, adding that she was already in the process of crafting several useful items. The heroine presented the princess with a fragrant oil for her bath, which she had developed in collaboration with the pharmacist. Realizing the source of the sweet aroma, Elmita thanked Aika and mentioned how helpful their conversation had been. Saika apologizes for the formality, noting that Ikushima-san feels a bit stiff and requesting a simpler way to be addressed. Elmita agreed with a smile and addressed her as Sika, causing the girl to cry out in embarrassment. Overcome with embarrassment, Saika submerged herself in the water and called for help, admitting she had spoken out of turn to the princess. Just then, a sneeze from the roof alerted Rosarina, who overheard the people downstairs remarking on the large number of individuals gathered there. The bandits scoured the area, frustrated that he had managed to vanish once again. After crossing paths with bandits near the hotel, he realized he had let his guard down more than he should have. The hero realized that while defeating them would be easy, it would only lead to more pursuers, so he chose to avoid them while recalling how Rosarina had covered for him. Anelise apologized for her lack of oversight, but he reassured her that it wasn't her fault, given the recent surge of bandits throughout the city. As Rosarina asked for an explanation, he grew increasingly concerned that his presence would eventually cause trouble for the hotel. With their monthly stay nearing its end and their finances in good shape, she suggested they start moving between hotels more frequently. Annalie reluctantly conceded that the reasoning was fair, though he found it a pity to leave such delicious food behind, offering only an awkward smile in response. He weighed his options, realizing that while Denjian was currently safe, the relentless bandits had no intention of backing down. Rosarina enthusiastically proposes a direct solution. By wiping out the bandits, her master would no longer be forced to stay in hiding. Panicking, he dismissed her suggestion, arguing that the 3 of them were no match for the entire gang, and that the city's master would have intervened long ago if they were beatable. The hero suspects that the cleanup effort is being stalled because the bandits have informants embedded within the official ranks. Toy examined his profession card, realizing that utilizing it might lead to a breakthrough. The hero formulated a strategy to deal with the bandits, planning to utilize a skill from his recently acquired profession. He planned to test his new profession in the dungeon the following day, but first, he wanted to focus on increasing his level and refining his skills. Annalie suggested they get an early start, and upon waking, he mentioned the need to head out and purchase some new gear. When the girl inquired about his new profession, he noted that the title was a bit grim and invited them to see it for themselves. Upon activating the class change, his appearance shifts to reveal his new profession as an assassin. The girls were stunned to learn about his assassin class, so he explained that defeating the boss with a specific item had inadvertently fulfilled a hidden requirement. He questioned the extent of the assassin's power, noting their base skills included stealth and divine speed, while Anali admitted she had only ever heard of such a class through rumors. She suspects her current role is a criminal profession that evolved from the thief class, a mysterious position from the shadow world with no recorded data. Rosarina resolves to eliminate the bandits, but quickly panics and denies it, insisting he never actually intended to go that far. Explaining that he wasn't interested in the profession's combat potential, he focused instead on a skill called stealth, and asked the others to turn away for a moment. Turning around to find him gone, the group began frantically calling out in a panic, only for him to suddenly reappear behind them and announce his presence. Toy explains that while the stealth skill provides total invisibility by suppressing one's presence, it cannot be activated if the user is already being observed. Anelise realized she could still move in this state, making it the perfect opportunity to slip in undetected. They grew suspicious that he might use the skill in a sauna, deeming the act entirely indecent. Horrified, he shouted that her suggestion was a crime, and insisted he didn't want to change careers, though Anelise quickly revealed she was only teasing. Anelise suspects he intends to infiltrate the bandit lair and take out their leader, but he clarifies that he isn't interested in such a reckless gamble. The hero points out that revenge offers no real resolution, adding that he finds it unfair to make such a significant choice on behalf of everyone else. He decided to infiltrate the administration building, intending to use his detailed analysis skill to identify anyone secretly working with the bandits. Should they present concrete proof, the landowner will intervene personally, as Toy is convinced that exposing the spies will strip the bandits of their power. The young man dedicated an entire day to leveling up his assassin class, quickly realizing just how formidable the profession truly was. The hero explained that targeting a vulnerable spot is a devastating skill, as it guarantees triple critical damage on the initial stealth attack. He noted that there were no restrictions on weaponry, even for two-handed options, while his already impressive base stats and divine speed skill further boosted his agility. Although attacking breaks his stealth and makes group encounters difficult, Rosarina and the others provide enough support to make it effortless, leading Toy to believe this is the perfect profession for a solo player. He realized he was in a preparatory class for assassins and understood that he had to keep it a secret to avoid a ruined reputation. After upgrading the assassin to level 10, the young man felt confident that everything was finally under control. The next day, he infiltrated the administrative office, realizing he hadn't expected his life in another world to turn into a stealth game. His priority was keeping his identity hidden, confident that his divine speed would allow him to escape if things went sideways. She was stunned to discover the depth of the corruption, realizing that officials were not only conspiring with bandits and embezzling funds, but also using their personal cards to act with complete impunity. Upon reaching level 10, he unlocked the abilities to phase through walls and completely erase his footprints. These new skills led him to suspect that his profession was strictly illegal. Upon discovering the records of the embezzled treasury, the hero clarified that the funds were being transferred to the authorities rather than stolen, noting that a thorough audit of the documents would expose the identities of every spy. Recognizing that the head of administration would likely suppress the evidence, he realizes he must deliver it directly to the ruler of the territory instead. Upon arriving at Kelnifi Castle, the young man observed that the soldiers were disciplined professionals, a far cry from the officials he was used to. Noting their exceptional discipline, he realized these weren't typical bandits and suspected they had capable leadership, prompting him to track down the Lord without delay. Finding the Lord's office empty, Toys assumed the man had already retired to his private chambers. After spotting the Lord in the room, he informed the maid that he wouldn't be ordering a meal and requested only wine. The maid informed the Lord that he was finally free to take some rest. An inscription appears, identifying Duke Arcane Gardland as the ruler of Kelnifi. The hero identified the man as the Lord, noting the air of mature charisma he projected. Upon seeing the Lord's profession listed as Duke, he realized it wasn't just a social title, but a literal classification of his status. Toy views this as the most prestigious of the aristocratic professions, and is terrified to realize his opponent's power levels far exceed his own. Panicked and fearing he had gotten in over his head, he decided to abandon the evidence and make a quick getaway. Despite his stealth skill still being active, the hero realized he had already been detected. Overwhelmed by fear, she questioned what kind of person he truly was, while he was so shaken that he nearly dropped his facade entirely. Although the analysis described the Duke as impeccable, he remained skeptical, questioning whether the man was simply looking for a way to suppress potential family scandals. Spotting a folder of documents on the sofa, the Duke noted that it hadn't been there just a moment earlier. As he combed through the documents, he discovered evidence of embezzlement within the accounting department and a list of individuals collaborating with bandits. Amused by the situation, he immediately ordered Zygen and Balkan to be summoned. The Duke merged into the void, remaining conscious of his existence as he questioned his identity, while acknowledging his own agility and courage. The bandit speculated on the stranger's identity, wondering if he was a rogue official fleeing a gang or just a remarkably persistent seeker. He realized that everything had been delivered to him personally, to ensure he would take immediate action. Fed up with the deep-seated corruption within the administration, the hero decided to put the matter on hold until the following day. He declared that he would grant a pardon for the crime of breaking into the castle. The man warned that he wouldn't show mercy during their next encounter, demanding that he return to the same spot the following night. After finally escaping the castle, he let out a sigh of relief, reflecting on the harrowing ordeal and the urgent need to reunite with his group. Anelise and Rosarina both called out to him, attempting to get his attention. He replies with a smile, noting that the Duke seems ready to take immediate action, which leaves a stunned Anelise to ask if he had spoken to the Lord directly. Toy mentioned that even with his stealth active, he felt an unsettling sensation as if he were being watched, while Anelise expressed her relief that he had returned unharmed. Rosarina reports that they moved quickly, managing to pinpoint the general location of the bandit's lair while he was busy infiltrating the castle, pointing to 3 specific locations in the slums on the map. She explains that she sensed movement underground and suspects the leader is hiding there. He realized that previous raids had allowed bandits to establish escape routes, which now presented a significant obstacle for him. The hero explained that he was well versed in infiltration and intended to search the area again, prompting a surprised Anelise to ask if he was heading out immediately. He explained that the purge would commence in the morning, ensuring the bandits remained completely unaware of the plan, while the girls insisted on accompanying him. While she insisted that traveling alone would be more efficient, Anelise remained worried about his safety, and Rosarina was simply looking for an excuse to beat up some bandits. He decided they should stay nearby as a precaution, instructing them to come to his rescue if he didn't return within the hour. Deeply concerned that he might not survive the hour, she is reassured when he explains that he can make his escape at any time. Reluctantly, she agreed to the plan but warned that she would charge in if he didn't return within the hour, a deadline he promised to meet. Suspecting this was the Chardina gang's primary headquarters, he realized it would be the perfect opportunity to locate their leader or uncover hidden treasure caches. The young man decided that if he found anything of value, he would present it to the Duke and make a swift departure. He noted that the group consisted mostly of unskilled thugs, though a few among them held more dangerous professions. The hero eventually locates the leader, a woman named Chardina, who holds the title of Blood Queen at level 18. She was taken aback to find the gang had been named after her, while he questioned the true nature of the Blood Queen's profession. She angrily demanded to know when the brat would be brought before her, having received word that he was spotted loitering in the eastern quarter. Infuriated, she barked orders at her subordinates to raid every hotel if they failed to locate him. Concerned that innocent people might get caught in the crossfire, the young man decided to leave immediately and shift his focus toward treasure hunting. After finding himself inside a hidden vault, he was stunned by the vast collection of jewelry, magical artifacts, and black gold stored there. He swallowed hard and resisted the urge, fearing that giving in would result in him being branded as a thieving hero. Unable to tolerate the situation any longer, Rosarina decided to scout the escape route and discovered a staircase leading down into a dungeon. Staring through the bars in horror, he suddenly remembered that all forms of trade were strictly forbidden in this city. Noticing that he's lingering, Rosarina asks if it's time for them to leave, only for him to suddenly appear right behind them. When they asked if he was all right, he assured them everything was fine and urged them to head home, though he was clearly struggling to suppress his mounting rage. He then turned his attention toward Anelise and Rosarina. The young man urged them to stop running and hiding, even if their lord chose to remain idle. He vowed to personally dismantle the entire gang, taking them down with his own hands. As soldiers and bandits engage in a fierce struggle, an onlooker questions the unfolding chaos, while a bandit boldly claims that their stronghold will not be easily breached. Balkan charges forward, striking fear into the bandits as they realize that even their superior numbers aren't enough to stop him. Infuriated, Chardina shouted for her people to hold him off, desperate to buy even a little more time. Realizing he was responsible for everything, she shot a furious glare toward him as he stood on the rooftop. 8 hours earlier, they would eventually discover the administration office was already closed, preventing them from submitting their application. True to his word, Duke Gardland oversaw the reconciliation process, which led to the arrest of 8 individuals for embezzlement and ties to bandits. While reviewing the documents in his office, the Duke confirmed that the information had proven to be accurate. The Chief of Staff apologized once more, admitting he never expected to find so many criminals among his own subordinates. The Duke insisted they shouldn't take the fall, admitting he had looked the other way regarding the influence of the powerful for far too long. The man commended Balkan for his hard work, a gesture the head of the knightly order accepted in silence. With visible contempt, Balkan remarked that it was disgraceful for anyone in public service to stoop to the level of a bandit. The Duke issued immediate orders, tasking Balkan with dismantling the gang while charging Zijan with a total information blackout to keep any rumors from escaping the castle. When the Duke asked for an explanation, Balkan revealed he felt as though they were being watched. Tui was struck with horror, realizing that Balkan had managed to sense his presence from such a great distance. He viewed Balkan as more of a monster than a man, a guardian knight over level 40 who was even more intimidating than the Duke. Elise cautions him that Balkan is the nation's most formidable warrior, rumored to have sliced through a fortress wall with his blade. She warns that if they ever cross paths, they must flee immediately. Inside the Duke's chambers, he was immediately recognized by the nobleman, who remarked that yesterday's guest had returned despite being told to visit only after dark. Enraged that the castle had been breached a second time, Balkan declared that the intruder must be neutralized, regardless of their identity. The man found himself positioned directly in the path of the incoming attack. Panic set in as he became convinced that he was truly done for. Intervening to halt Balkan, the Duke explained that the man was his guest and would have already acted if he intended to cause any harm. The man questioned if he had come to witness the situation personally, feeling slighted since he had already provided the evidence and dealt with the culprits. The Duke noted that he had already proven his goodwill before asking if a gift had been brought for him today. He tossed the folder onto the floor, revealing documents that detailed the bandits' hideout, a list of their stolen loot, and the exact whereabouts of their leader. Segun was horrified by the records he found, while the Duke realized that these illegal individuals were the reason so many people had gone missing. The man insisted that an immediate raid was necessary if the intel held up, but Balkan cautioned it could be a setup, given that the information likely originated from an insider. Shijun voices his concerns about a potential bandit raid on the castle, prompting the Duke to agree that they should wait for confirmation before asking Balkan for his input. Balkan didn't feel even the slightest bit threatened by the man. Questioning whether a single squad could hold out against 300 enemies, the Duke decided to send only a small detachment to ensure the castle remained well defended. Balkan reassured the group with confidence, stating that he would handle the situation personally. Intending to handle the entire group alone, the old man herds the bandits from the flanks toward the center, only to be caught off guard by their unexpected strategy. He questioned the capture of the workers and how their leader had managed to escape. He soon realized they were discussing their plan openly, fully aware that he could hear them. The young man couldn't help but curse the Duke's cryptic expression. It was clear they expected him to deduce the finer details on his own. Toy realized that he had been intentionally chosen to hear the specifics of their plan. Infuriated by his exposure, the Duke's expression shifted as he attempted to project the image of a compassionate seeker. Toy had already resolved to make the climb on his own, viewing any assistance he received as a fortunate bonus. Turning his attention to Anelise and Rosarina, he confirmed that everything was proceeding exactly according to their plan. Panic erupted among the bandits as they realized the enemies attacking them were actually knights. Back at the base, the bandits scramble into action, shouting warnings to their comrades that they are under attack. After being alerted that the knights are closing in from both flanks, she lashes out in a rage, demanding an explanation for the situation and her informant's sudden silence. The informant tried to excuse his delay by claiming the administration office was closed, but she lashed out in anger, furious that he hadn't told her immediately. As Balkan emerged, the bandits were struck with terror upon recognizing his identity. The formidable sword of the Balkans finally revealed itself. One bandit rallied his comrades, insisting that taking Balkan's life would earn them great prestige. As he monitored the fight, he noticed the southern resistance was holding strong, prompting the knight to call for a retreat once he realized the enemy possessed inhuman power. The towering bandit easily overwhelmed the defenses established for the knight. Activating her moral boost skill, she receives a 10-second surge to her physical attributes. She burst through the wall, confident that 10 seconds would be more than enough time. While the others were left questioning who was responsible and where he had vanished, a knight alerted them that the gate was open and led the soldiers forward. From atop the roof, he commended Rosarina for her restraint, noting that her ability to hold back despite her urge to fight was truly admirable. The young man suggests that if the bandits find themselves pinned down, they could attempt a retreat to the northern base, though he acknowledges it will be no easy feat. He suggests sealing the passage to isolate the northern region, a mission Anelise is more than happy to undertake. With fire magic restricted within the city, she instead unleashed a physical strike using her mana arms at full power. She unleashed a mana strike, reducing the entire passage to rubble. Feeling the tremors of the earthquake, Balkan realized that the intruder was backed by some very capable allies. Upon learning that the underground passage to the northern base was destroyed, Sardine was infuriated to find the southern defenses had also been breached, leaving her forces struggling to maintain control. Believing they've been played, the desperate woman suspects a betrayal, but she refuses to back down just yet. Chardina warned her subordinate that leaking any sensitive information would cause serious complications, then ordered the elimination of every prisoner in the dungeon. When her henchmen questioned their destination, Chardina offered no explanation, and instead commanded them to follow her. The subordinate forced the girl onto the table and brandished a knife, claiming that their leader had given the order to destroy everything. After silently slitting the bandit's throat from behind, the assassin watched the body collapse and informed the prisoner that knights would arrive soon, though he ultimately decided against leaving a mark on the man's head. As Chardina led her crew through a secret passage, the men struggled under the weight of their heavy cargo and asked for her assistance, only to be told to stay quiet and follow her lead. Upon reaching the stairs, Chardina explained that climbing them would lead them to the surface, but when she turned to urge her subordinates along, she was stunned to find they had vanished without a trace. Confident that her subjugation skill kept her minions from escaping, she suddenly sensed another presence in the room. Chardina questioned whether her opponent truly believed he had her cornered, right before she activated her unmasking skill. Warning the assassin not to underestimate the great Chardina, the girl hurled her weapon toward Toy. Raising his sword just in time to block, the hero realized he had narrowly escaped death, saved only by his swift reflexes and gear from the poisoned strike. Chardina beat a hasty retreat with Toy hot on her heels. Refusing to let her escape, he took a shortcut by crashing straight through the wall. After stepping out onto the rooftop, the assassin struggled to catch her breath while questioning the head of the barter if he was indeed the man named Toy. Chardina explained that he had demolished years of her hard work, leaving her with the task of rebuilding her gang from scratch. Toy proposed that she be sent to the mines to atone for her sins, coldly noting that she might not even survive the labor given her age, which prompted Chardina to shriek a violent threat to cut off his limbs. The assassin and the gang leader lunged at one another, exchanging strikes in mid-air, but the girl failed to land her hit. Sardine was forced back, falling from the roof and crashing into the barrels below. As the head of the night department approached, the girl questioned his identity, only for him to ask if she was the same Sardine. Toy sensed a lingering loneliness in Chardina, despite the many subordinates at her side. In contrast, the hero possessed genuine bonds with allies he could truly rely on. When Rosarina and Anelise called out to their master, he met them with a warm smile. Balkan was notified that the bases were secured and the children were safe, prompting him to order the knights to maintain their vigilance until the evacuation was fully complete. The knight commander conceded that Milord was correct and found him to be an intriguing individual, marking the 30th day since the hero's rebirth. A week after Chardina and her gang were defeated, public safety in the city saw a marked improvement. Since the hero's team was no longer being pursued, they decided it was time to move out of the hotel. The group rented a house to serve as their new base of operations, where she could finally fulfill her long-awaited dream of relaxing in a proper bathtub. Rosarina and Anelise suddenly joined him in the bathtub, leaving him stunned by their bold intrusion into the bathroom. As the girls urged him to set aside his shyness, the witch even offered to help wash his back. A few days prior, the heroes had visited the Golteo trading house to inquire about a rental home with a bathroom, and the merchant assured them he had the perfect location. The group eventually found a suitable place to stay, though Toy was immediately concerned that the house might be far too large. Complete with 3 floors and a garden, the hero viewed the house as a true palace for himself and his team. Golteo agreed, explaining that the building was formerly a nobleman's country estate and featured both a storage cellar and a wine cellar. The merchant explained that in the wake of recent bandit attacks, many nobles had either lost their influence or fled the city, allowing their estates to be sold at bargain prices. He noted, however, that the house would require some professional cleaning and maintenance. Concerned that his budget couldn't sustain such a lavish mansion and staff, Toy considered giving it all up, but Galtao had other plans. He pointed out that the hero party could reach the dungeon's middle floors within a single month, arguing that establishing a sturdy base was a wise long-term investment. After considering this proposal, Toy silently agreed, recognizing that a proper home is essential for someone braving the dungeon daily, and the prospect of a hot bath was hard to ignore. Calculating his monthly rent and service fees at roughly 80 gils, he was confident his savings could handle the cost, but he still decided to hunt bosses more frequently to prioritize leveling up and earning more money. Toy informed Golteo of his decision to purchase the house, prompting the merchant to thank him and offer a handshake. Golteo promised to begin the arrangements immediately and asked to handle the service selection himself, leaving the hero impressed by his professional competence. Anelise remarked on the boldness of his decision, while Rosarina expressed her relief that they could finally begin their training in the forest. The following morning, the boys were introduced to the household staff, starting with the versatile head butler, Mondark. Beside him stood his wife, Merlis, who managed the cooking and cleaning, and their son, Jewel, who was responsible for the gardens and general maintenance. After the hero introduced himself, Golteo suggested that 3 servants would be sufficient for the household, personally vouching for their work ethic. After introducing Anelise and Rosaline, Toy requested that they be treated with the same level of respect as himself, prompting Moglark to bow and mention that formal language wouldn't be necessary between them. The hero discovered that this family had once served a noble household in a different country. After relocating due to certain circumstances, they settled for a very modest wage. Toy hadn't expected to have his own personal butler, and he informed the staff that they could reach out to him whenever the need arose. Mondark inquired about the eating habits of Mr. Toy and Mrs. Anelise, prompting the girl to blush as she explained that their relationship was being misunderstood. Elise protested, attempting to explain her role as a servant, but the girl sternly warned them not to even suggest it. The hero mentioned that he wasn't picky about his meals, prioritizing quantity over quality. Toy then requested to address his companions by their first names. While cradling a bewildered Anelise, Rosarina admitted she also had a massive appetite, a sentiment Mondarch acknowledged. The family of servants performed their duties flawlessly, impressing Toy with their attentiveness and culinary expertise. Realizing the mansion had plenty of vacant space, he invited Mondarch and his family to move in. Since all three were skilled martial artists, their home remained secure even during their absence. Toy's team established their private quarters on the 3rd floor, and though he initially assigned the girls separate rooms, they eventually decided to move into his anyway. The hero realized that while the magical artifact provided access to a kitchen and running water in this new world, the high cost of the magic stones required to power them made these utilities difficult to afford. As Toyside stood on the balcony, Anelise approached and asked if something was bothering him. The hero admitted he was still adjusting to the massive mansion, noting that his previous home had been significantly smaller. When asked if he would return to his original world if given the chance, Toy explained that he now belonged here, as he couldn't imagine living in a world without Anelise. Rosarina caught her comrades off guard with a sudden hug, loudly announcing her arrival, while Toy noted that after their restful break, they would return to the dungeon the following day to tackle the 5th floor. Entering the Duke's office, Segun reported that a recent investigation into gang connections had led to the decision to penalize 4 trading houses and 8 noble families. After Arcane ordered the trading houses to be stripped of their rights and property, Segun inquired about the fate of the nobles, only for the Duke to command their total destruction as a grim warning for the future. Arcane ordered their crimes to be publicized, sentencing the family heads and their adult sons to execution while decreeing that the women and children be relocated to the temple. The Duke mandated that everyone, including relatives, must present their identification cards without exception, a requirement Rekishin acknowledged with a nod. Arcane anticipated that his severe methods would meet resistance, but he viewed such backlash as inevitable, insisting that the residents' safety remained the top priority as Zaijin promised to carry out the task. The Duke inquired about the missing assistant, but the man reported that while the intelligence service was still investigating, a promising candidate had been identified among the city's seekers. Zygon explained that a man calling himself Toy appeared a month ago, though descriptions of his physical appearance remain elusive. He added that, according to bandit testimony, the traveler was searching for a specific girl. Sejon reports that while the man was officially registered as a level 1 adventurer who cleared dungeons with an elderly elf and a goblin, the Duke noted that the intruder's capabilities far exceeded those of a typical novice. Recalling Balkan's report regarding a skilled magician and warrior, Arcane realized that the members of Toy's comrades held truly powerful professions. Jiju noted that the man possessed a skill to conceal both his appearance and class, suggesting he was either an assassin or held a similarly specialized profession. Arcane realized they couldn't gauge his true power, and they were wise enough to avoid a conflict that might end in a fatal betrayal. The Duke found it peculiar that the intruder eliminated the leader, but left the rest of the gang to be dismantled by the knights, leaving him to wonder about the man's true intentions. Finding such behavior disrespectful to his authority, the ruler of Kelnifi ordered Zajant to maintain strict surveillance until the Toy's true intentions were revealed. As the group arrived at the 5th floor of the Baldark dungeon, the hero noted that the area was quite spacious and inhabited by cow monsters. Anelise explained that the maze's cows are easy to manage since they only charge in straight lines, dropping both delicious meat and valuable materials like hides and horns. Because of this, the 5th floor has become a hotspot for mid-level seekers. As the bull charged toward her, Rosarina caught it by the horns and used her strength to flip the massive creature onto its back. Toy was amazed to find that Rosarina was stronger than a cow, and as she explained that timing is the most crucial factor, a cut of premium beef dropped from the animal. Anelise unleashed a fire spell on the cow, noting that the dungeon provided ample space for her magic, though the resulting aroma of grilled meat soon began to pique her appetite. After the witch warned him about a bull charging from behind, Toy leaped into the air to narrowly dodge the strike. The beast barreled past him and slammed into a rock, causing its horn to break off from the force of the impact. Behind a rock left by the cow, the heroes discovered a hidden chest, confirming Toyna's suspicion that guiding the animal to the correct location would lead to a reward. He asked Anelise to inspect the chest, confident her assassin skills could handle any potential traps. She noted that the box was unlocked and appeared harmless, yet the witch couldn't shake an unsettling premonition. She told the others to keep their distance so she could open the chest using Manaruka, while the boys took cover behind a rock as a massive magical hand unsealed the lid. Seeing that the chest appeared empty, Anelise moved in for a closer look. Toy tried to intervene, but dark tentacles suddenly lashed out and ensnared the girl. After slicing through the tentacles to free the witch, Rosarina fled and kicked the trunk shut, causing the goblin's leg to be injured by the heavy impact. Toei attempted to slice the chest down the middle, only to realize his mithril weapon was ineffective against the monster's overwhelming physical defense and vitality. The hero and the goblin alternated their strikes, but they soon noticed the enemy remained strangely unfazed by the assault, prompting Anelise to step in and handle the opponent herself. Warning her companions to clear the area, she loosed a fire arrow that struck the monster directly. The chest began to burn as the hero realized the monster was vulnerable to magic and attacks directed at its mouth. He praised the witch for her assistance, and she admitted that she had never encountered such a creature before. With the chest defeated, Rosarina spotted an item that had fallen out, which Anelise identified as a grimoire used for changing professions. Toei was unaware that items like the magic book could actually change a person's profession, and upon checking its detailed appraisal, he discovered it was worth a fortune. The man suggested selling the item for a massive profit, while the witch noted that its value would skyrocket in regions lacking a dungeon. Magic books were highly sought after by dungeon seekers, as these rare items could fetch a massive fortune. Toei recalled Anelise's mention of her past as a swordsman, and questioned if Dunya's shift to magic was caused by the book, which Dunya explained she had found by chance early in her travels. She explained that her group had a standing agreement. The first person to find the book would be the one to use it. While she initially hesitated between selling the item or keeping it, she eventually decided to leave her life as a swordsman behind to become a magician. The girl was certain that a career in magic was worth the effort, especially given the variety of roles one could take on within the dungeon. Whether she worked as a soldier or a craftsman, her contributions were always valued, leading him to ask if it was possible to learn magic without having to rely on rote memorization. Anelise explained that magic is a skill reserved for specific professions, which are incredibly difficult to enter. She noted that even those with talent must undergo at least 10 years of rigorous study at specialized institutions. She explained that while magic was typically a privilege of the nobility and the wealthy, the dungeon provided a rare opportunity for a commoner like her. Toei realized he finally had the opportunity to become a magician, and was fully committed to the goal, understanding that he alone was responsible for changing his profession. This was especially significant given that Anelise had already mastered the craft, while Rosarina also possessed her own unique set of abilities. Believing that a team consisting of 2 mages and 1 melee fighter would be perfectly balanced, Toei decided to delay his class change since Anelise was already serving as their sorceress. While the young man remained preoccupied with the magic book, Rosarina successfully defeated the 5th-level boss, the Labyrinth Bull. After exiting the dungeon, the group sold their materials from the 5th floor for a high price, which Anelise noted was due to the fact that exploring the 5th Varley typically takes 4 to 5 days. Toei cherished the daily opportunity to finally unwind in the bathroom. He felt a sense of relief that they had ultimately decided to rent the house. The hero suggested it was time for the group to advance to the 6th level, then turned to Anelise to ask how many floors she had previously reached. The girl explained that she had reached the 5th floor of the Barlot dungeon and changed her profession before moving to the capital, though she suddenly cut her story short. Toei inquired about the situation, and the girl reassured him that everything was under control, explaining that the 6th floor's difficulty had spiked because monsters were now resisting standard attacks, and new flying variants had begun to appear. Due to the threat of such monsters, warriors like swordsmen and spearmen often hit a plateau at the 5th level, forcing them to either change their profession or master advanced skills to survive. Toa began to understand that the 6th level was reserved for those with far more experience, but he placed his trust in his companions, who reassured him that they would prevail. Resting between the sleeping girls, the hero spent the night deep in thought, suspecting that Anelise had been cursed shortly after her arrival at the capital. Although he was curious about the details, he decided not to pressure her into sharing her secrets before she was ready. Toei had no intention of ever returning to the capital where his enemies resided, wishing only to strike the memory of their faces from his mind. Yet he couldn't honestly say he didn't need anyone. As he thought of Sayaka, he came to the grim realization that he might never see his classmates again. Upon reaching the 6th floor of the Baldark dungeon, Toei noted the vast open space and towering ceilings, leaving him curious about what kind of encounter awaited them next. Spotting an approaching threat in the distance, he realized it was a level 18 stone gargoyle, which Rosarina immediately met with a kick to the wing. After landing, she noted the creature's immense durability, making Toei realize how difficult it would be to fight a flying enemy with such high physical resistance. These factors rendered his skills as an assassin effectively useless. After transforming into a hero armed with a 2-handed sword, Toei instructed Rosarina to channel her fighting spirit. He then struck the gargoyle with a bastard slash as Rosarina followed up with a fiery fist, quickly reducing the stone monsters to rubble. Noticing that their special attacks were landing, Anelise pointed out that magic was also quite effective against the monsters. While the hero attempted to boost the group's morale, they were quickly surrounded by a swarm of gargoyles. Rosarina panicked at the sheer size of the horde, and Toy noted that with their skills on cooldown and mana reserves low, the three of them were at a severe disadvantage. The hero suggested the team fall back to the entrance to recuperate, and once they were clear of the battlefield, he sighed, admitting that facing such overwhelming numbers was an exhausting challenge. Even though he believed Anelise's magic was enough to handle their enemies, he decided to use the magic book regardless, a choice the witch supported. The girl expressed her desire to become a magician just like her, and when she asked for his thoughts on the matter, he voiced his agreement. Upon opening the book, Toy watched as magical symbols emerged, feeling as though they were being etched directly into his mind. After reviewing the strict requirements, he moved forward with the class change anyway, successfully attaining a master's degree and catching Elise completely off guard. Toy hadn't realized that a magister was distinct from a typical magician, while she knew the sorcerer class occasionally appeared. This was the first time she had ever heard of the master rank. Upon reviewing the information, the young man discovered that the probability of success was remarkably low. With Anelise's confirmation, Toy set out to test whether his new profession would be effective in a fight against the gargoyles. He soon realized that the Magister profession specialized in magic enhancement, allowing him to upgrade Rosalind's fire magic into a more potent fire attribute. Since he could grant his allies various bonuses to their stats and abilities, it became clear that his true role was that of a buffer. Once the hero applied the boost buff, Rosarina gained a significant surge of speed, while Toy demonstrated his ability to grant various other types of power-ups. With a single fire-infused kick, Rosarina obliterated several gargoyles, making the hero realize she was now more than capable of handling herself in battle. While he had anticipated a different magical path, the Magister class proved to be a solid alternative that allowed him to distinguish himself from Anelise. Realizing his personal combat strength was practically zero, he understood that success now rested entirely on his allies, though he feared their three-man team would struggle to clear the dungeon. While exploring the system, the hero discovered a life buff and decided to test it out. Upon placing the stone on the ground, a small golem immediately sprouted from it. Toy reinforced Iwachan and commanded the gallant to strike, but its low level caused it to crumble immediately. He then proposed using a life buff as a diversion, while Rosarina suggested they continue practicing at a more relaxed pace. Empowered by their recent enhancements, the group ventured into the dungeon to battle monsters, eventually concluding the fight when Toy noted that their levels had increased. Letting out a sigh, he called an end to the day's work, as the team decided to take the high-quality materials they'd gathered from the 5th level back to their base. Toy also acquired a rare item called the Stone Turning Point. Despite its dull edge, it had a high chance of petrifying any enemy it struck. The hero envisioned himself wielding the blade against an assassin, while Anelise was delighted to learn that the weapon's tip could transform into stone. After emerging from the dungeon, the group went to trade their loot for cash, but the clerk was surprised to see only F-rank magic stones, recalling that this same team had brought back materials from the 4th floor during their last visit. When the girl asked if they had already reached the 6th floor, Toy awkwardly explained that they had ended up there by mistake thanks to an experienced friend. The staff member cautioned them to stay alert, explaining that the 3 stunning women were already well known throughout the city. Although he was flattered by the news, he quickly ushered them away the moment he saw another man attempting to flirt with them. The hero noted that despite their efforts to avoid others within the dungeon, rumors were still spreading through the city, a situation Anelise suspected was due to their frequent material submissions. Toy mentioned they had some extra funds for a night out, and since he had already informed the staff they would be dining elsewhere, the girls readily agreed to the plan. The group settled into the Sinnoh Tavern with a meal of stewed chicken, clinking their mugs in a grateful toast before a stranger approached to ask for a moment of their time. Toei and his companions were caught off guard by the stranger's sudden approach, but the man quickly introduced himself as a servant of Duke Holdren, explaining that he was scouting for talented seekers who had already proven their skills. They approached him with a recruitment offer, leaving him to wonder how they already knew his name, until he realized they likely sourced it from the guild's records. He was well aware that once a person's level rises, the military inevitably comes looking for them. A servant approached with an invitation to speak with the government, leaving Toy puzzled as to why he was being summoned when the records showed that Rosarina and Anelise held higher official rankings. Apologizing for the misunderstanding, the hero explained that a simple traveler like himself wasn't suited for life at court, which led the servant to ask if he would prefer to have girls serve him instead. Infuriated by the proposal, the man declared that no amount of gold would convince him to part with them, prompting the other to apologize and clarify that the bill had already been settled. Declining the payment, Toy left the coins on the table and informed the girls that they would be changing their dinner location, while the servant added that they would all soon reconvene at his home. It became clear to the hero that this man was no ordinary scout. In reality, his objective was simply to buy more time. As the group stepped out of the tavern, they found Balkan already waiting for them. He made it clear that he had no intention of letting Toy escape. Balkan informed him that Duke Garland had requested his presence. The man then stated that the youth would be accompanying him to the palace. The Knight Commander warned that refusal would be branded as an act of rebellion, leaving them with no choice but to take the young man's head. Toy hadn't anticipated that Balkan would actually come looking for him. He couldn't fathom how the man had managed to see through his cover. Feigning ignorance, the hero claimed he had no idea what the commander was talking about. He questioned why a powerful lord would have any interest in a common traveler like himself. Balkan warned that excuses were pointless, asserting that Toy knew the truth better than anyone. Realizing he could no longer feign ignorance, Toy began searching for a way to escape the situation. Recalling Balkan's unnaturally wide attack range, Toy knew a single wrong move would result in an immediate strike. Yet, despite having the divine speed necessary to escape alone, he refused to abandon the girls. Rosarina stepped forward into a combat stance and demanded they clear the path so her friends could eat, while the knight warned the captain that the goblin was actually a knight. Toy yelled out that Rosarina was no match for Balkan, who soon noticed her hesitation and questioned why she was holding back. The goblin trembled in fear, unable to strike as she realized Balkan could easily cut her down with a single counterattack. Toy realized that despite Rosarina's strength, she couldn't possibly defeat an opponent nearly triple her level. He intended to stay composed, but Anelise's presence quickly diverted his attention. Whispering her resolve, she promised to restrain Balkan with every ounce of her strength, using the world to forge a path while urging the others to flee the city without looking back. The elf warned that if he were captured now, he would likely face imprisonment or even execution, as the Lord considers his presence a threat equivalent to an entire band of outlaws. Anelise explained that the Duke intended to eliminate Toy before the Master spiraled out of control, assuming this was his reasoning. The magician stepped forward and instructed Rosarina to protect the Master, while Toy realized the girl would sacrifice everything for him, and that Balkan would show no mercy if the Duke commanded it. Choosing to stop running, the hero smiled and declared his intention to meet the Lord in person, suggesting that a direct conversation could resolve their misunderstanding. After Toya confirmed with Balkan that he was needed alone, he reassured a worried Anelise that he would be fine, telling her to wait at home and to contact Gorteo if he didn't return on time. Toy's file underwent a security check before entering the mansion, confident that his skills could facilitate an escape if things went south, though he remained wary that being labeled a criminal would put the girls in jeopardy as well. Toy found it impossible to decipher Duke Gardaland's true motives, and though he expressed concern over his lack of formal etiquette before entering the office, Balkan assured him that the Duke wasn't bothered by such trivialities. Arcane Gardaland was waiting in the office to introduce himself, though he openly doubted that someone with such slender arms could have actually defeated a sardine. The young man expressed his confusion over why he had been summoned, but as the Duke approached the hero, his assistant cautioned him to remain wary of the boy. Arcane remarked that he commanded Garterland as naturally as his own limbs, noting that even the royal family lacked such absolute control. Toa repeatedly insisted he had no idea what was happening, paralyzed by the fear that he was about to be stabbed, until the Lord finally decided to get straight to the point. Garterland declared that the young man had earned a reward, acknowledging that the bandit gang could not have been defeated without Toy's insider intelligence, evidence of corruption, and direct assistance during the assault. The Duke argued that after so much preparation, failing to pardon the outsider would confuse the knights, adding that the young man's personal feelings were irrelevant and he should simply accept the reward. While the hero reflected on the worth of his deeds and the rewards to follow, Flore told him he must specify his desired payment to Count Sagan. Toy observed that the Lord disregarded formalities in favor of strict punctuality, leading the young man to conclude that simply killing him would be the easiest solution. Refusing the reward, the hero instead requested that Gardaland use the funds to compensate the victims and honor the knights for their service. The Duke sighed, explaining that it had been finished long ago, before asking the young man if he was familiar with the treasure trove of the sardines. The man questioned if he would accept the payment regardless, but Toy refused, stating that as a seeker, he preferred to earn his own living within the dungeons. Amused by the young man's audacity, Balkan pointed it out to the Lord, leading Gardaland to offer him a different reward instead. The man formally appointed the Toy Seeker as an honorary baron, leaving the hero stunned by his sudden promotion to the nobility. Arcane directed the Count to prepare the documents at once and school the insolent youth in the principles of noble honor. While Sigun agreed to handle the arrangements, Toy was told to accept the reality of having rejected the money. Rosarina and Anelise met the owner near the mansion, who was visibly trembling as he approached them. When the elf asked if he was all right, the man offered a simple nod, prompting the goblin to ask what had happened while the magician noted his pale and exhausted appearance. Rosarina rushed Toy to the bathroom to restore his body heat, placing him directly into the water. Once the treatment was finished, the young man regained consciousness resting on Anelise's lap. He apologized to his companions, and while Toy reassured him that his mind had simply been overwhelmed and he was fine now, the magician admitted they were terrified he wouldn't return to them. After apologizing to the hero for the interruption, the girl inquired about the events at the Duke's estate, where the man explained that he had officially attained the status of a nobleman. Toy admitted he still hadn't fully grasped his own identity, leading Rosarina to congratulate him on his new title, while the rest of the group remained silent. Inside the Lord's office, Sigun advised the young man to first understand the responsibilities of an honorary baron, handing him a stack of documents and instructing him to master the fundamentals now while reviewing the finer details at home. Zygen explained that while the man held the rights and duties of a baron, the title was non-hereditary and would only last for his lifetime. He was warned of his obligation to assist the ducal house during crises, which the Count clarified could include wars, natural disasters, or major monster hunts, and was told that Toy must also attend the council twice a year. After the young man asked to continue his dungeon exploration, Jijun gave his approval, though he cautioned him to act responsibly and preserve the honor of the ducal house. Letting out a breath, Toy reaffirmed his need to continue venturing into the dungeons. When the Count questioned whether he understood that both death and conflicts with other seekers were strictly forbidden, Toy gave his word that he would proceed with caution. Sigun explained that the estate Toy was currently renting would be converted into official housing, revealing their plan to purchase the property and gift it to the Baron, which left Toy stunned that his rental was becoming his own. Opening the suitcase, the Count explained that the honorary Baron's salary amounted to 12 million grills annually, with an additional 3 million for the final 2 months, while Sigun warned the young man not to be too impressed, noting that the platforms were simply lifts for the servants. The man insisted that an honorable defense required at least 1 knight and 5 soldiers. The Count agreed, advising the young man to find trustworthy allies, while Sigun suggested it was time for Toy to choose a surname and a coat of arms. After addressing the servants and girls, the hero admitted he was feeling overwhelmed and asked Mondalka to help him master the intricacies of noble etiquette, receiving a firm promise of support in return. Toy recognized the pressing need to recruit 1 knight and 5 soldiers, as Mondok and the other servants were unfit for the task, and Anelise and Rosarina were ineligible for official enlistment due to their status. Mondok mentioned he knew someone with extensive nighttime experience currently in the city, and when he offered to reach out to them, Toy gave him his approval. The man mentioned that a tailor had been summoned, and while the hero was being measured, Mondok relayed the Count's request for them to visit the palace once the Baron was formally prepared. This upcoming meeting would serve as the occasion for Sigun to officially approve the new surname and coat of arms. Toy appreciated the immense help Mondok had provided, and noticing his hair had finally grown back, he realized nearly 2 months had passed since his arrival in this world. Once the costume was finished, the gentleman asked for Anelise's opinion, and she was clearly delighted with the result. After Mondak complimented her elegant appearance, she met with the Count to officially register her name and coat of arms. Having officially joined the nobility as the honorary Baron of Futsiko, Toy arrived at the Duke's mansion and offered a respectful bow to the Lord. The hero adopted his family's ancestral surname. His coat of arms was uniquely adorned with the image of a wisteria flower. He was aware that floral motifs were a rare choice for such heraldry. In contrast, the Dukes of Gardaland famously displayed dragons on their crests. Arcane expressed high expectations for Toy, though the young man bristled at the patronizing tone. As the hero prepared to depart, Balkan stopped him, insisting on joining him on his journey. Toy's intuition proved correct as they eventually moved to the training field, where Balkan relentlessly ordered the exhausted young man to get back on his feet. As soldiers marched past the field where Toy and Balkan were practicing, the hero was knocked to the ground by a strike, prompting the Baron to demand he get back on his feet. Toy questioned how long their session would continue, but Balkan simply stated they would train until he managed to stop her, leaving Toy feeling as though he was being mocked. He announced that the entire month would be dedicated to the knight's intensive training, noting that he would be joining their ranks starting tomorrow. The hero voiced his disapproval, arguing that he never actually joined the military and still had plenty of personal business to take care of. Balkan insisted that training must come first, arguing that people would never follow a leader who hides and relies on cowardly tactics. The knight commander declared that if the young man was confident in his skills, he would have to land a single blow to prove he no longer required training. Sighing, Toy swapped his weapon for a broadsword and shifted his class to a two-handed sword hero, determined to avoid spending an entire month training with the knights. After his opponent demanded he take the battle seriously, Toy questioned if he should use his skills before activating his two-handed sword support, body strengthening, and foresight. Sensing a sudden shift in the atmosphere, the Baron wondered how she would manage to move effectively while wielding such a heavy two-handed sword. Opting for a direct assault, the hero struck the Baron from multiple angles, making the man feel as though he were facing several opponents at once. The knights watched in astonishment as Toy effortlessly swung the massive sword, noticing that he was already starting to overwhelm their captain. Balkan noted that this boy possessed solid technique and sharp reflexes for someone self-taught, though his lack of experience was still apparent. With a swift strike, Balkan hit Toy's weapon, sending it flying from his hands. Leaping into the air to confront the Baron, the hero aimed to deliver a coordinated combination of divine speed and a shadow palm strike. The opponent seized the young man and slammed him into the ground, remarking that while his aim was precise, his attacks were far too easy to parry. Toy was astonished that Balkan could repel an attack from the dead zone without using any skills, though the man cautioned that the hero shouldn't rely on favorable combat conditions, as he could easily be caught off guard. The Baron explained that instinct and experience are the true deciding factors in combat, reminding Toy that he would need to participate in the upcoming training, a requirement the hero accepted. The squad rushed to the Baron to check on his safety, praising his impressive performance throughout the battle. It was remarked that even among the knights, few could rival the captain's combat skills, making Toy feel quite self-conscious. Upon the hero's return, he announced his plans to train with the knights for a month, prompting a disgruntled Anelise to question why his clothes were always in tatters after every visit to the palace. Toy collapsed onto the bed in tears, wishing he could return to the dungeons to report the commissioner's treatment as abuse, while Anelise stayed by his side to comfort him. Meanwhile, the hero realized that over-reliance on his skills could become a liability, so he decided to participate in duels to gain valuable combat experience. Approaching with an apology for the interruption, the butler sought to clarify the schedule, prompting Toy to inquire about the identity of the night stranger they were set to meet the following day. Mondarch informed them that the guest arriving the next day was the commander of his former master's squad, a man of proven strength and eccentric character. Filled with anticipation for the upcoming night's interview, he decided to consume a potion to ensure he looked refreshed and blemish-free, with Annalie assisting him in the process. While tending to her wounds, the girl reassured him that everything would be all right, reminding him that it was the Lord who ultimately chose the knight. Meanwhile, Annalise believed that as long as she stayed true to herself, things would work out in the end. The following morning, the hero met his guest, who arrived dressed in a formal suit. He was immediately struck by the man's imposing stature and realized that Ganderban was a bear beast he had encountered once before. The hero realized the Beastman party leader was standing right before him, busy harassing Rosarina near the boss room door. Ganderban recalled the figure known as Toy in the Dungeon and asked if he was truly Baron Futicle, a fact the young man quickly confirmed. The hero identified the Beastman as a level 22 heavyweight knight, whose past as a squad leader marked him as a truly experienced combatant. Ganderban apologized for his previous disrespect in the dungeon, admitting he hadn't realized Toy was an honorary baron, though the hero clarified that his noble status was still quite new. He inquired about the wolf beastman's fate, and the bear explained that a severe injury sustained against the fifth-floor boss had forced him to retire to the countryside. Despite this, he ignored his commander and stubbornly pressed forward. Toa questioned if Ganderban was concerned about his reputation, but the man insisted he wouldn't hide his failure to save his ward when he first entered the service. The hero admired Gandervan's integrity and sense of responsibility, prompting Toy to ask what would happen to the remaining group if he entered the Baron's service. In response, the bear suggested they deliberate on the future of his people. Members of the Ganderban detachment gathered on the street, awaiting their leader's arrival. Up to this point, the furthest the group had ventured into the dungeon was the 6th floor. Lin, the spearman, pointed out that the group would need a new name if their captain departed, while the swordsman Bars argued that they should instead support their leader's pursuit of happiness. Solidia, the fox beastman, hoped Ganderban would notify the Baron about them, while Jojok, the lizard man, advised her to prepare for the arrival of the Baron and the captain. Despite the pressure, she maintained that the commander was the only person they could truly trust. Having watched from the shadows the entire time, he silently commended the squad for their discipline and unwavering trust in Ganderban, though he noted that the young swordsman and spearman still had much to learn. Upon entering the mansion, the hero instructed the heavyweight knight to assemble his squad, resulting in one knight and 4 soldiers being placed under Baron Futsikel's command. Moved by the sight of Toy, Lin reached out to pat his head, while Bars was stunned to learn that the man in the dungeon was actually a baron. Jojuk marveled at how the hero had managed to earn such a title at such a young age, as Celilia noted the massive height difference between Ganderban and Toy. Admonishing the squad for their disrespect toward the baron, the bear questioned the young man's decision to recruit them so quickly without first evaluating their abilities. Toy agreed, recognizing that his habit of relying on instant analysis to solve every problem wasn't always the best approach. He then checked if everyone was geared up, as they were heading straight for the boss. The hero wasted no time in relocating his squad directly to the dungeon entrance. Caught completely off guard, the beastmen struggled to make sense of the sudden maneuver. It was then that Darban instantly recognized the technique as a dungeon movement skill. Toit complimented this man's extensive knowledge regarding different abilities. The bear then shared that he had previously witnessed a frontline team utilizing that very technique. The Baron mandated that the squad sign a non-disclosure agreement, as he was determined to keep the true nature of his skills a secret. A pair of maze bulls stood firm, blocking the boss's path. Toy felt uncertain about their ability to overcome both beastmen at once. The squad rose to their feet, bracing themselves for the upcoming confrontation. Ganderban commanded the team to proceed with their standard strategy. Facing a coordinated attack from 2 bulls, the bear utilized agrofixation and deployed a shield, causing their horns to slam harmlessly into the barrier. Leopard and Lin coordinated a pincer attack on the bulls, while the spearmen executed their triple spear skill, and the swordsman unleashed the storm sword. Celidia and Jojok arrived to provide backup, with the young man unleashing his slashing ability while the girl activated her jumping spear. As the animals' bodies began to burn, Toy was impressed by the seamless precision of their coordination. He felt that recruiting an established team was his best decision yet, as their natural synergy gave them a massive advantage from the very first encounter. After Toy updated his class, he instructed the Ganderban squad to assess their current strength, leading Rosarina to battle bulls, Anelise to face goblins, and the Baron to take on massive insects. Observing their immense power, Ganderban realized that with a trio this formidable, guards would be completely unnecessary. Lin questioned Toy about his ability to alter his appearance, while Bars identified the trio from the rumors as Jujok fell into deep thought. Upon emerging from the dungeon, Toy's party consisted of a single knight and 4 soldiers, yet he was already looking to recruit another member to their ranks. Recalling that Rosarina was a voluntary debtor, Toy realized she could be freed once her financial obligations were met. Having witnessed her combat prowess against the bandits, he felt compelled to secure Anelise's freedom as well, leading him to seek Zegan's advice on the situation. Toy realized that his new noble status demanded his best effort, though he quickly remembered the grueling training session scheduled for the next day that Ganderban had promised to join. Back at the castle, a dissatisfied princess summoned Akaba, who appeared to be in a rather foul mood. Bermuda struggled to comprehend how Akaba could abandon a wounded comrade to die in the dungeon, questioning how he could still claim the title of a hero. Akabas told the girl to be quiet, feeling she was making too much of a fuss over a low-grade assistant. He asserted that his survival as the hero was the only thing that truly mattered, asking her if she had any objections to that. When Sayaka asked if Neba was the one who had died, the princess recalled his role as a porter, a unique class from another world, and learned he had been driven to exhaustion and frequently beaten by the 3 heroes. Blaming Nuevo for his own demise, the couple argued that returning for him would have been fatal for everyone, with the man firmly stating they would never set foot in the dungeon again. 8 hours ago, the exhausted squad finally reached the boss's chamber and stopped to recover, while Akaba demanded that Noiba tend to his wounds. The knight interrupted him, noting that it was finally his turn to receive medical treatment. Meanwhile, the fire hero pointed out that victory would have been certain if the man hadn't interfered in the fight. When Akaba shouted for everyone to get back on their feet, one of the girls pleaded for a bit more time to rest. After reporting that their supplies were completely exhausted, she noted the half-day journey ahead, though the hero was finished with spending a 3rd night in the wild. Akaba conceded and ordered the squad to retreat, but as a mana-depleted Nueba asked for a moment to rest, he stumbled just as the floor tiles beneath him began to collapse. The fall resulted in a broken leg that left him unable to walk, and after hearing the full story, the princesses were shocked that the heroes had simply abandoned their porter in such a state. Hermita's frustration grew into a headache as she struggled to comprehend why the group wouldn't simply abandon their supplies to help their fallen comrade. The magician explained to the princess that Nueba's healing abilities allowed him to restore his mana and mend his own wounds, leading her to believe he would return completely unscathed. The alchemist clarified that since a fracture is classified as a status effect, It can only be mended using advanced recovery magic or supplementary healing. Claiming she was unaware of the situation, the girl argued that their low levels would have made it impossible to cure him, though her friend quickly pointed out that she was a healer herself. The hero realized that even if the porter was mobile, navigating back from the third floor alone would be a challenge, and he suspected the man was still located in the boss room. She warned that because their members had previously attacked other seekers, they were now completely isolated and risked being killed by those seeking revenge. The heroes grew increasingly defensive and frustrated, questioning if she held them responsible, which prompted the girl to announce that she was officially leaving their party. The hero confessed that the adventure wasn't enjoyable at all, eventually breaking down in tears and pleading to return home. The princess contemplated sending a squad of knights for support, but feared the public and sponsors would view it as a failure on the hero's part. Aware that violent protests were inevitable, and feeling responsible for summoning these people, she knew they couldn't simply abandon them to their fate. Sayaka committed to rescuing Noea, explaining that her ability to enhance object effects would allow her to craft a potent potion for the porter. Her friend interrupted her thoughts, asking what was on her mind and how she planned to reach the third floor given her martial profession. Mizusawa supported Sayaka's plan and offered to assist her, unaware that the fracture required professional medical attention. The princess recognized Mizusawa as a multi-talented hero capable of offense, support, and healing, further bolstered by his medical expertise from the old world. While she found this news encouraging, she voiced her concern about his stamina, questioning if he was up for the task so soon after his recent trek. Mizusawa offered reassurance, explaining that they weren't tired yet since they were only on the first floor, though they planned to advance to the third floor in 2 days. Okabe grew frustrated with the hero of the Blue Sea's attitude, while Mizusawa, unsure if a non-combatant could make the trip safely, asked the alchemist about her current level. Sayaka revealed she had reached level 18 just yesterday, a statement that caught all the heroes present completely by surprise. Citing her high stats and proficiency with throwing weapons, the girl promised she wouldn't let the team down, while Mizusawa planned to form a small mobile unit to set out immediately after training. Sayaka's friend grew increasingly concerned, struggling to understand why she and Artisan would take such a massive risk. She admitted she couldn't bear the thought of anything happening to her, but Sayaka promised her she would return safely. The alchemist then turned to the princess and gave a silent nod. Led by the hero of the Blue Sea, a squad ventured into the dungeon on a mission to rescue Noea. Sayaka had reached a turning point and refused to back down any longer. She believed that Fuji would have made the same choice had he been by her side. As they moved forward, the heroes engaged in combat with the monsters lurking within. Noea was reminded of the bullying he suffered back at school, realizing that even in this new world, his situation remained the same. He stood powerless before his tormentors, certain that no one would come to his rescue. As Naiba regained consciousness, he was met by a relieved Sayaka and the hero of the Blue Sea, who informed him that they had arrived for his rescue. He urged the porter to drink, noting his severe dehydration, while the young man struggled to believe they had actually come for him. Mizusawa then told Naiba to be grateful to Sayaka, as it was her potions that had kept him alive and healed his injuries. Overcome with relief, the porter tearfully thanked the heroes for coming to his rescue. This scandal left Akaba's reputation completely tarnished. His team soon fractured, eventually splitting into 3 separate factions. Now operating independently, the 4 heroes found themselves in a state of open hostility. While training with the knights, Toy suffered under a malicious instructor, but the arrival of Ganderban and Rosarina finally helped scale back his direct confrontations with Balkan. The young man could tell that Anelise was visibly uneasy within the castle walls. Because of her criminal background, she tried her best to keep her distance. The hero had previously encountered her on the street and invited her to join him for lunch. Anelise hesitated to accept, not wanting to be a burden to her master. But before she could mention her remaining chores, he reached out and took her hand. Toy disregarded the opinions of others, choosing to stay by her side and reminding her that her bravery during the bandit attack that night would never be forgotten. During his meeting with Zaijian, the Baron explained that while liberating the goblin would be simple, the elf's situation was far more difficult because her owner was a low-level criminal. Sigun pointed out that while the Duke could release her by official decree, the public would likely reject the decision unless it was framed as either a reward or a punishment. Recalling that the girl's aging curse was the catalyst for the accident, the man realized there was now a chance to negotiate a lighter sentence, leading Zijin to promise she would inform the Duke and advise the hero to resume his training. A strike from Ganderban's shield snapped the boy out of his thoughts as the man warned him to stay focused. The hero reflected that while the bear was undeniably cruel, it was still a far better alternative than facing the Balkan. As Rosarina trained with the instructor nearby, she activated her skill and resolved to fight at full power, prompting Balkan to take note of her formidable fighting spirit. Sensing her opponent's feral intensity, the girl stood her ground with unwavering resolve as Rosalind's fist collided with Balkan's blade, leaving Toy in awe of their power. While the heroes trained throughout the week, they spent their weekends tackling dungeon bosses. After Toy pushed the beastmen to complete 5 more floor rotations, the squad began to see the Baron as just another ruthless coach. By fulfilling secret requirements through past boss encounters and dedicated training, the hero successfully advanced his class to a rare swordmaster. The swordmaster possessed immense strength, and the young man noted that his skill set included counterattacks, precision strikes, and self-support. By strategically alternating between these abilities, Toy was able to swiftly dispatch the cow monsters on the floors. Feeling that the Traveler designation lacked prestige, he paid 200,000 yen at the temple to officially change his class. Now officially recognized as the Baron of the Swordmaster's box office, Toy noticed during his encounter with Balkan that the people were regarding him with newfound admiration. As Anelise trained with the magician attached to the Night Order, it appeared to him that she was explaining the fundamentals of the magical perception skill. Her colleague was stunned by her constant use of the ability, but she explained that heightening one's sensitivity to magic is the most efficient way to master all forms of control. She believed that with enough practice, they would eventually even be able to identify specific individuals just by sensing their presence. Observing the reactions of the other magicians, Toy wondered if Anelise had said something unsettling to them, finding it hard to believe she had lived in a state of constant, intense focus for so long. Although Solidia and Lin voiced their frustrations over the daily training and dungeon runs, Bars recognized that this intense routine was causing their levels to soar, while Jojak noted they would achieve even greater power if they continued to follow their master. 3 weeks later, the city was unsettled by reports of a gruesome crime wave in the entertainment district, where a series of young women had been found with their throats slit. Within a single month, the number of victims had already climbed to over 10. Consequently, the knights were dispatched for urgent city patrols, cutting their training short by a week. Balkan announced that the infantry's intensive program had concluded, though he noted they would resume if the situation demanded it. After the man ordered the squad to begin their patrol, Toy admitted to Anelise that while he was glad training had finished, the ongoing serial murders still weighed heavily on his mind. Summoned to the Duke's office, the hero was thanked by Arcane for his participation in the training. The Duke noted that the young man had already begun recruiting his own followers, mentioning that Zygon had already briefed him on the status of his new companions. While unable to provide a concrete response at the moment, the man promised he would do his best to find one. The Duke brought up the recent string of murders known as the Ness Thug case, assuming Toy was still unaware of the situation since he had only just arrived in the city. Arcane explained that over a decade ago in El Knife, the serial killer Nest was executed for the murder of 8 girls, yet the man noticed a new crime that bore the exact same signature. The Duke reported that the body count had already exceeded 10, suspecting a professional assassin was responsible. A grim realization that left Toy feeling deeply unsettled. Arcane questioned Baran about the case, but seeing the young man's confusion, he decided to be direct, and revealed that he wanted him to take down a nest of thugs. Having officially entered military service, Rosarina was assigned to the Ganderban unit, quietly hoping for the opportunity to work alongside the commander. Lin and Solidia were stunned to find Rosarino sharing a bath with Mr. Toy. Gundabald reminded the girl that as a soldier, she needed to maintain a professional boundary with her master. When Goblin suggested she should bathe with the commander instead, the bear quickly clarified that he didn't mean that at all. While sharing a bath with Cecilia, Lin admitted she never imagined her daily life would involve both exploring the maze and swimming in the tub, a sentiment her friend completely agreed with. The cat had always assumed all aristocrats were arrogant, but their master proved to be a refreshing exception, with Lisa adding that the young man was genuinely kind. Noticing a girl sitting beside him, they inquired about her identity. Since the mansion featured a separate wing for servants, the hero decided to house his squad there, and though they were officially his vassals, their primary role was labyrinth exploration, as even the capable Mondalok and his men couldn't manage every task on their own. Having the staff live nearby proved to be quite efficient, especially after he hired a cook and a new maid named Kenny. In her eyes, the Baron was an admirable young man, though her attempt to greet him resulted in a clumsy tumble right at his feet. Toy was aware of Kenny's timid nature and social difficulties, but he'd heard she was exceptionally skilled when working solo. Helping her to her feet, he offered a polite greeting. Introducing himself as Zappa, the cook claimed full responsibility for the kitchen while offering an apology for his blunt manner of speaking. Although the hero recognized his southern origins, he couldn't help but notice that Zappa's culinary skills didn't quite measure up to those of Merlis. As an experiment, Toy shared several recipes from his world with Zappa, who managed to recreate them almost perfectly while simultaneously improving his own cooking skills. Since Mr. Vulcan's Night Order began their patrols, no new gifts had appeared. While standing on the balcony, Anelise asked Toy if he was still preoccupied with the killer. He confirmed her suspicion, noting that the Duke had specifically tasked him with resolving the matter. Despite the halted attack, the hero wasn't convinced the killer had actually left the city. He suspected the culprit was simply laying low, waiting for the knights to lower their guard before striking again. Toy expressed his doubts to the Duke, but the Duke explained that the city guard had already spent a month fruitlessly searching for their target. Despite the challenge, the Lord remained convinced that the Baron was the most qualified person for the job. Knowing that his request for Anelise's freedom had left him indebted to Arcane, the hero realized he had no choice but to comply. With a heavy sigh, he promised to give his full effort while making it clear that he couldn't guarantee a successful outcome. Since then, Toy had repeatedly used his stealth skill to investigate the Night City, but he had yet to uncover anyone suspicious. Sitting on his bed, the young man reflected on the situation, still unable to uncover the culprit's identity or their true motives. He questioned whether the executed murderer had somehow returned from the dead, though he understood it was just as likely the work of a copycat. As he went to lie down, he accidentally landed on Anelise's lap instead of the bed and quickly apologized. She gently patted his head, confessing that moments like this reminded her of when they first started their journey into the dungeons. Recalling that Anelise had moved into the soldiers' barracks, Toy blushed as he wondered if a romantic atmosphere was truly beginning to develop between them. Suddenly, a knock at the door revealed Mondaluk, who arrived asking for news only to be told that Canny hadn't returned from the store, leaving Toy stunned that she had gone out so late. After Julie apologized for an inventory error, Kenny decided to visit the store herself, but concern grew when the maid noted she was an hour late, especially with unsettling rumors spreading through the city. Mondarch and his son planned to search for a maid, but Toys stopped them, insisting he could handle the task much faster on his own. The heavyweight knight sought to join his master, but he was instructed to stay and guard the mansion with the soldiers. However, Gandalfon remained undeterred. Toy agreed to let the boss and Jojok accompany him. The trio hurried through the city streets at a steady pace. Kenny's destination was a shop located along the main shopping thoroughfare. Since she was far from the pleasure district, she was in a much safer area where an attack was unlikely. Suspecting the killer was hunting in areas the knights had failed to patrol, the young man felt a wave of unease and informed the soldiers he would scout ahead. Kenny walked home with a bag of groceries, having been delayed by a delivery error that the shop compensated her for with free items. Realizing she was behind schedule, the maid quickened her pace to ensure she wouldn't cause any inconvenience for Mr. Jewel. Kenny opted for a shortcut through a dark alley, but as she made her way down, a sudden noise from behind startled her. Sensing a presence behind her, the girl turned around, prompting Kenny to flee just as she missed the stairs and tumbled down, dropping her package in the process.